Commissioner Kaiser? Present. Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Nanke? Here. Chair McCoy?
Here.
Commissioner Osick?
Here.
Commissioner Hoy?
Here.
Commissioner Cook? Here. Vice Chair Lewis?
Here.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Lewis, do you have a motion here on the additions and deletions?
I
Do
don't
we
see
have
any
any?
additions or deletions.
Don't have any, good. We're to public comment. And we don't have anybody signed up for public comment. Is anybody here that would want to speak to the Housing Authority agenda or any of the items on it? Okay. Commissioner Lewis, consent calendar.
I move passage of the consent calendar as submitted.
Moved by Commissioner Lewis, seconded by Commissioner Nanke to move approval of the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And Mr. Andy, do you have anything you'd like to add or throw in here to the conversation for the good of the order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real high-level report on the tax credits I'm asking you to approve tonight. So we have two projects. One contains Jaquina Hall, and the other and the other part of that project is South Fair. And then we have the rental assistance demonstration project. And really what's happening is they really look like they're coming really closely to be the same, not the same project, but one's going to become right before the other, right? So that's why I asked for authority on both of these, because they're both moving quick, and we think we're going to be in two fairly large projects at the same time. We have the capacity to do that. We have our partners to do that, but everything's moving quickly, and that's why we doubled this up, if you will.
Okay. Good. That has passed. So anything else? Keep up the good work, my friend. Thank you. Seeing no other business, this meeting, the Housing Authority of the City of Salem is adjourned.
I call this meeting of the City of Salem Urban Renewal Agency to order. Call the roll.
Board Member Kaiser? Board Member Anderson?
Likewise.
Board Member Nanke?
Here.
Board Member McCoy?
Here.
Board Member Osick?
Here.
Board Member Hoy?
Here.
Board Member Cook? Here. Board Member Lewis?
Here.
Chair Bennett?
Here. Okay. Councilor McCoy.
Well, there are no additions and deletions to the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have any public comments? Okay, we have no public comments. The consent calendar then.
I move approval of this consent calendar with the following poll. Item 4.3F by myself. Councilor McCoy.
Second.
And,
Yeah, why don't you go over it?
okay. On the consent calendar tonight, we've got the minutes from the April 10th Urban Renewal Agency meeting. We've got some exceptions to the Riverfront Downtown Urban Renewal Area Capital Improvement Grant Program that we've got appointments to the North Gateway Redevelopment Advisory Board and the West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board. We have West Salem Redevelopment Grant Program guidelines, and we've got these to include and to add into the guidelines environmental cleanup and the definition of an eligible project. We've got intersection improvements at Commercial and Union Streets, authorizing the use of $125,000 of unallocated Riverfront Downtown Urban Renewal Area funds for the intersection improvements at Commercial and Union. This is to make it part of the bike-friendly path up and down Union Street. And that money goes to the city for the project, and that's basically to have enough funds in there to complete that project. The estimates have gone up since this was first authorized 3 or 4 years ago. And we have exceptions to the West Salem Redevelopment Grant Program guidelines to assist with the lead cleanup at 576 Patterson Street Northwest. And we increased the grant match from 20 to 50%. To allow for lead cleanup in that industrial building. That is it.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Have an information report. And then special items. You want to?
Yes.
Do you want to
yes.
inform us?
Yes, Kristen
Thank you.
Rutherford, Urban Development Director. I want to comment on the funding package and the commitment letters before you this evening for our affordable housing project on Portland Road. This is before you twice tonight, first under the Urban Renewal Agency and then later on the City Council agenda. So we will be approving commitment letters as well as a draft home agreement. And I just want to clarify that while we're not anticipating any changes to the terms of the deal, there are 3 legal entities that are involved in this development. And so the draft documents before you may see some future change tied to the specific entity that will be involved for each portion of the funding. I just wanted, for transparency's sake, to make sure that you are all aware that we may be making those modifications in the future.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? All righty, we'll go to special orders of business. Councilor McCoy?
You want board member Casey to do this?
Do you have the motion? Okay.
I have a motion.
Okay.
It's a special.
Well, it is the motion, I think.
Yeah. I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And,
4.3E.
yeah, 4.3E. E or F? F.
No, that was 6A.
Yeah.
That was 6A.
Oh, okay.
Now we got to get to 4.3F.
All righty. Councilor McCoy.
I move staff recommendation for 4.3F.
You want
Did we
to?
mo- Well, I was asked to pull this because we had some changes that I think Director
We just went a bit out of order. The explanation that Director Rutherford just made was for this
Yeah.
item.
That was,
Okay, that's
That was the
it was like,
nothing new about that. Don't look so...
east side of the room, we didn't know what was going on there.
Well, neither did I. That's why I called on Councilor McCoy. I thought he'd do this motion first to follow her explanation, so.
Okay. Well,
Hence.
what she said.
Okay. Okay, anyone want to discuss this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. No further business. The Urban Renewal Agency is adjourned. Call to order this meeting of the Salem City Council for March 8th. Councilor McCoy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the additions to the agenda.
Second.
Second by Cook. Okay.
And those additions are, we've got some revisions on 3.3E, replaced attachments 2 and 3, and on 7.1A, the utility code, revised issue and recommendation.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Okay, chance for councilors to make comments. Councilor McCoy.
Hey, I'll make one. I was lucky enough to be downtown here last Friday when it was the first full day of open for the new Peter Courtney Bridge there, and so I had an hour in between meetings, thought I'd take a walk, and walked over that, and it was great. I mean, it's gorgeous, impressive bridge in the first place. The path through leading down into Minnow Brown Park is very nice, and they've got some real nice, I don't know what you call them, information pieces through there that tell you what you're seeing and where you're going. But I was really impressed by the hundreds and hundreds of people that were out on a very nice Friday afternoon walking that bridge in our newest asset to the city. So well done to everybody that brought that forward, Peter and everybody else, past councils and Mr. Mayor. It's really a spectacular addition, and until you see it and you're on it, I don't think you realize how cool it is.
With your permission, Councilor McCoy, I'm going to just add to your comment. I asked Mr. Fernandez for a compilation of total traffic on that bridge, because it felt like an awful lot of people were traveling on it. Since April 27th, when it opened, had its soft opening, 64,541 people or crossings have occurred on that bridge by pedestrians, 1,593 by bicyclists. That's 5,378 crossings per day on average, and 133 by pedestrians, 133 cyclists. So it's well on its way to having everyone cross at once, if nothing else. Anyone else? Councilor Lewis.
Well, I want to chime in too. I've been waiting for this new bridge to open up ever since my doctor said I needed to walk 2.5 to 3 miles a day, and walking around Riverfront Park is only 2 miles. So I've been waiting for that extra half a mile, and it's now here. I've been across the bridge every day and came back, so twice, every day since it's opened. And of course the crowds Friday and Saturday and Sunday were huge, but every day since then there has been a number of people using that bridge, and they all seem to be saying the same thing, how cool it is, how the environment can change overnight depending on the river level. And it is truly one of the best, it's the neatest asset to come into our front room, certainly since I've been here.
Thank you. Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you. As one of my neighbors put it, the city got a new toy. Just wanted to let people know quickly that on Monday, May 15th, at the next West Salem Neighborhood Association meeting, they're going to have the Polk County Health Department, Oregon DEQ, and the Oregon Health Authority there to talk about the cleanup efforts of lead at 567 Patterson Street Northwest, and also about getting businesses back into that building. So if anyone's interested, they're trying to get people to come down to that meeting to learn more about it.
Great, thank you. Councilor Anderson.
I want to add to the bridge comments. I've ridden my bike. I'm at least 4 of those trips of the Director Fernandez counted, and Saturday I rode all the way down to the connection with Minto Brown Park, and it was terrific, and it's a lovely path all the way down there, and I think it looks great, and it really is easy access. I just rode through the park and came out on River Road and came back, so I can see all sorts of benefits for that. And it's going to be an iconic thing for the city of Salem, and 20 years from now, nobody's going to say, oh, well, it took 6 more months to complete than we needed, or, oh, it was over budget. It's like, nobody says that about the Eiffel Tower now, that it took twice as long. It's a symbol of Salem, and it's going to be terrific. But I also will say, and I see Chief Morris here, I am glad we put 2 more bicycle officers in the budget, because that's a long way, and there's a wildlife refuge there till you get to the park, and we're going to need to be sure that we can protect that. That's the other part of the asset of the city that's there that we want to protect.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, just a quick reminder, we have 2 the neighborhoods have their annual meetings this week. Morningside is on Wednesday evening at Painters Hall in the Sustainable Fairview Pringle Creek community area at 6:30, I think it is. And then Fay Wright is on Thursday at Wright Elementary at 7 o'clock. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? I had the honor last week of participating in the National Day of Prayer at the B-17 Alliance Museum out at the airport, which was a place I hadn't been before. And I just recommend to anyone interested in that era of flight and of the military, it's a fantastic museum, and they're essentially rebuilding the Lacey Lady, which is the, if you'll recall, years ago driving up on 82nd, the bomber gas station. It's that bomber, and it's really quite remarkable what they're doing. And they have tours, they have a museum, they have all kinds of things going on out there. So it was not a place I was particularly aware of, and I really enjoyed it. It's quite a lively group. They're really doing an amazing job out there. So we will eventually have the sound of a B-17 overhead when they complete their project.
I would have been remiss if I actually read a proclamation from the mayor, National Day of Prayer on the Capitol steps last week again as well for the local organizers had asked for that, and I was happy to deliver.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilor. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Mr. City Manager?
Nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's proclamation night. Here we go. We had a number of organizations and activities coming up that we want to draw to the public's attention and to also honor. I'm first going to call up the Make Music Day organizing team: Mark Green, Karen Green, Doug Hoffman, Carly Wright, Brian Hart, and Julie Eaton. And here is the proclamation, and the proclamation says, whereas Make Music Day Salem is an annual one-day festival on the first day of summer, the longest day of the year, that celebrates the ability of everyone to make music, and whereas Make Music Day Salem is part of the international celebration inspired by Francis Fret de la Musique, which began in 1982 with events in 750 cities across 120 countries. And whereas Make Music Day Salem involves musicians, bands, and ensembles from a diverse array of styles and genres, including everything from classical jazz and blue to folk, pop, rock, and world music. And whereas Make Music Day is a wonderful way to make music in the community and raise awareness that creating music is for everyone. And whereas music has been shown to strengthen social connectivity, reduce stress, lower blood pressure, stimulate memory, and is integral to a well-rounded, enjoyable life. Wow. And now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim June 21st, 2017 as Make Music Day Salem and encourage the community to celebrate the day by making music, dated this 8th day of May, 2017. Signed, Chuck Bennett, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just wanted to thank the mayor and the city council and Councilman Anderson for helping us with this, as well as Parks and Recreation and Community Relations for the support.
This year, we had 70 bands last year, and this year we already have 90. And we're looking for a full day of music, free music for everybody of every type, going downtown and throughout the city. So we want to thank you very much and appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks for your support.
We will look forward to a day of music and lower blood pressure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, not to be outdone by music, we have National Safe Boating Week. And I call up the following auxiliaries who will be in full uniform. This is a note to me. Dennis Wood, District Captain, Kurt Lundeen, Division Commander, and Cheryl Lundeen. Cheryl, are you the? Cheryl. You're Cheryl, great. And Cheryl will receive the proclamation, great. Here you go. Whereas recreational boating is an enjoyable family activity, and whereas the area in which we live provides us with ample resources to make that activity available to community members and visitors, and whereas while boating is a wonderful source of recreation, it can be a risky activity for those who are not well prepared. And whereas knowledge and skills are vitally important in reducing human error, recreational boating and during recreational boating, and whereas boating accidents are declining due to increased education and training, and whereas boaters who lose their lives due to drowning are most likely not wearing a proper fitting life jacket of appropriate type, and whereas life jackets of modern design are more comfortable, more attractive, and more wearable than those of the past, and should be an enjoyable part of the boating experience. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim May 20 to 26, 2017 as National Safe Boating Week, and invite the community to join me in supporting the efforts of boating safety professionals to promote safe boating education and encouraging safe boating habits. Dated this 8th day of May 2017, signed Chuck Bennett, Mayor.
We're with the United States Coast Guard. We're the auxiliary, and that week will be nationally recognized. There'll be boating classes. We have one in Salem on June 10. Pardon me?
Where?
At the Elks Lodge on Turner Road, starting at 9 in the morning. And we teach all the boating safety. We teach how to put on a life jacket and how to fit correctly, the children as well as adults. We're just promoting, as people learn their boating skills, it will save lives.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. You bet. And Chief Moore and your team. Well, everyone knows who you are. You're the star of stage, screen, and television these days. Nah. Yeah, we thought there was a problem, didn't we? Yeah. Whereas the Congress, got everybody? All right. Jake's here, huh? Whereas the Congress and President of the United States in 1962 designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week, and whereas these annual observations provide the opportunity for all people to join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present for dedicated service to their community, and whereas members of our community should know and understand the responsibilities of our police officers and recognize their duty to serve, and whereas officers of the Salem Police Department play an essential role in protecting our community, and whereas with dedication and commitment, our Salem police officers defend our homes, schools, and places of employment and keep us safe as we go about our lives. And whereas officers do not let down their guard, we should not forget our gratitude to them for facing untold risks in the line of duty. And now, therefore, I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, do hereby proclaim May 14 to 20, 2017 as Police Week, and ask the community to mourn the fallen, as well as salute the men and women who do the difficult, dangerous work of safeguarding our community. Dated this 8th day of May, 2017, signed Chuck Bennett, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you. That means a lot. As the mayor jokingly said, I am often the face of the police department, but I thought it was really important to have the people that are here with me tonight who are, while we're sleeping or in a meeting or whatever, actually taking care of this city. And I will tell you, I'm surrounded by wonderful people in this organization, and this is just a small sampling. I'd like to introduce them real quickly. I don't want to be remiss. Director Mark Buckholz from our 911 Center, a couple of our K-9 officers, Trevor Morrison and Matt Gill, and Jake. Jason Conwell from Patrol Division, a couple of our downtown bike officers, Andrew McFerrin and David Smith, Deputy Chief George Burke, Lieutenant Sean Adams, and Deputy Chief Skip Miller. And I appreciate your round of applause earlier, but these are the ones that really deserve the credit. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief, very much.
Now, would one of you counselors like to take on the dog?
Come to me. Wears a suit that gets you trained that way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Remember, that's election week, too.
That's right.
Just throw that in since we can.
Okay, and finally, it's Fill the Boot Days. Joey Wigand and Bryce Glavatsky, two of our firefighter paramedics. Sir. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good, thank you. Whereas muscular dystrophy refers to a group of more than 40 neuromuscular diseases, and whereas the Muscular Dystrophy Association is a voluntary health agency that was created in 1950 by a driven group of parents whose children suffered from a form of muscular dystrophy, and whereas 75% of every dollar raised by the Muscular Dystrophy Association goes directly to research, healthcare, and education, and whereas Local 314 firefighters annually hold Fill the Boot Days in Salem, raising thousands of dollars to benefit children with neuromuscular diseases, now therefore I, Chuck Bennett, Mayor of the City of Salem, on behalf of the people of Salem, offer our best wishes to those living with neuromuscular disease, and do hereby proclaim May 18 and 19, 2017, to be Fill the Boot Days in Salem, and encourage all people to participate by dropping money in the boot at one of the following intersections: Market Street Northeast at Lancaster Drive Northeast, or Liberty Street Southeast at Trade Street South, dated this 8th day of May, 2017, signed Chuck Bennett, Mayor. And here is the proclamation.
Thank you very much, sir. Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to the citizens as well. We really appreciate it. I'd like to introduce, this is Bryce right here as well. He's one of the other co-coordinators. We have our vice president for the union, as well as our captain at Salem Fire Department, Gary West. And we have our deputy chief, Ben Mosa, over there, that is also here supporting us. So we just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate it. This is not only a City of Salem tradition, but the fire department tradition that goes back many years. Last year, we raised over $42,000, and we're hoping to increase that a little bit more, absolutely. And that's all from the help of all of you, okay? 100% of the proceeds go directly to muscular dystrophy. So as much as we want to go on a vacation afterwards, we don't get to this time. So all the proceeds go to them, and that's kind of what we do it for. We do it for that organization. So Again, thank you so much. Stop on by, say hi. We love meeting all of you. If you want to stop by and say hi to us, we'll absolutely hang out with you. It's a long day, and we love to do it. So, again, thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it.
Okay, we now have time for public comment. If you'll recall, this is an opportunity to speak to issues on the agenda this evening. I ask you to follow the lights. It's a 3-minute system. You're allowed 3 minutes to speak. The yellow light means you have 1 minute left. The red light means please stop, and if you don't, I'll say stop. How's that? We'll keep this moving. We've got quite a bit of business this evening. So I'm going to start with Brian Bosch and followed by Zachary Wrighton. Brian Bosch. Oh, I hope I got the name right. Okay. Zachary.
Hi, Zach Rattan, 254 Turnage Street Northwest. Here with Willamette Valley Bank. Here is an independent. Speaking on Uber, so I hope I'm at the right spot.
You're in the right spot.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Well, yeah, I mean, I spoke last time just for being a proponent of bringing the ride share here. I don't know how many of you all were able to make it out this weekend to both Taco Crawl and Cinco de Mayo, but the city was alive. A lot of stuff going on, and myself and some other friends, again, fell victim to 1.5 hour plus wait time on cab to get home. And it's something that also I feel as we address, also I believe later on the eclipse, how we're going to kind of get people around during that time. Is something that is sort of on the forefront of my mind. So again, just a proponent of it. Thanks for having me, and that'll be it.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Sean Johansson?
Hello, Mayor Bennett, members of the council. It's nice to see you all again. This is now my 3rd time standing before you in front of this matter, and needless to say, my encouragement to you to pass it hasn't changed. I do want to come before the council after reading through some of the more detailed information. I know there was some concerns raised about vehicles being easily identified, that when they're in service. Lyft actually has produced a new system they've started handing out to drivers in the Portland area called an AMP. It's a small, think about the size of a Beats pill lit device that goes on our dashboard, which automatically illuminates and is connected to our phones via Bluetooth. That way, from the front, even in the middle of the night, you can see your Lyft vehicle coming, and you're notified of the color your dash device will be. That way, people aren't getting in the wrong vans. So I wanted to bring that to the attention of the council. That's something new that Lyft is currently rolling out nationwide. I'm not sure who to provide it to. I'd like to make my personal phone number and email address available to the council. That way, if there's any questions, as a driver, I'd be happy to try and answer them. And if it's something I can't answer, I've made the connections within Lyft. I can get them for you. And I'm also here today to answer any questions you may have before we go into the vote.
Any questions? Righty. Well, Sean, hopefully this will be our last time to come down on something else.
On this issue. Last time on this issue, I'll definitely be back for more. Okay. I've kind of gotten a taste of being involved with the city.
Thank you. Chip Conrad. Okay. Anyone else want to speak on an issue out in front of the council this evening? Aside from the public hearings. Okay. All right. The consent calendar, Councilor.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the consent calendar with the following poll. Item 3.3E by myself.
Second by Yankee. You want to go through them?
Yes. And we've got the minutes of the April 24th council minutes. April 24th council meeting on the consent calendar. We also have an intergovernmental agreement with Marion County, between the city and Marion County, for them to undertake the design and construction of an asphalt slurry seal surfacing project on a variety of city streets and at the Guerin Island Water Treatment Facility. We have a subordination of a home investment partnership single-family rehabilitation loan for a property located on 9th Court Southeast. Defers payment on the loan. Intersection improvements at Commercial and Union Street that we talked about under the urban renewal. This is the same project now. The city council is approving the grant amendment to receive the $125,000 of riverfront downtown urban renewal funding for construction of the improvements at the intersection of Commercial and Union. We've got street light relamping incentives through the Energy Trust of Oregon, where we're authorizing the city manager to submit an application which, if accepted, would constitute an agreement with the Energy Trust of Oregon for funding incentives in support of the street light relamping project. And we receive a significant amount of funds as we go through that relamping project. And we have finally, a position on elements of a possible state transportation funding package. We want to ratify Salem's position on elements of a possible transportation funding package as may be proposed in the Oregon State Legislature and is as recommended by the Council's Legislative Committee.
Excellent. Any discussion? Councilor Anderson.
Before we even discuss, I'll second that motion. I don't think there was. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes,
okay. He's so quick.
I know.
Councilor
I know. And he's very.
I just have a question on 3.3B, the home investment loan for Director Rutherford. As I read that, it seemed to be phrased in the past tense, like the home loan was for this, was for that. Does that program still exist, or does it no longer exist?
We no longer do single-family loans through home.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I'm going to return to public comment. Chip Conrad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chip Conrad. I have a house on Equestrian Loop out there on South River Road. And in speaking in regards to Uber, I don't know where we're at on bringing Uber, Lyft, rideshare to the community. I hope that it does pass and come through. I've been heading up a Facebook group called Bring Uber, Lyft to Salem. And it's just been overwhelming how much people would really like to see rideshare program here in Salem. And as we grow up and become a bigger city, I think it's a great addition. Thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Conrad. Okay. We'll now move to public hearings. Does she introduce it? Would you introduce the, thank you, sorry.
The City Council will now hold a public hearing regarding the vacation of a portion of Rose Garden Way Northeast. The criteria that are applicable to the decision are SRC 255.065B6. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing in person or in writing, or failure to provide statements or evidence with sufficient specificity to provide the applicant and the City Council an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any participant may request an opportunity to request additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The City Council shall grant such request by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing on item 4A. Staff
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Anthony Gamalo, and I'm a transportation planner with the Public Works Department, and I would like to enter the staff report into the record. This is a public hearing to consider a petition submitted by the Larry and Jeanette Epping Family Foundation to vacate the easterly 159-foot portion of Rose Garden Way Northeast. You can see it here in the northeast portion of the city. It's right off Portland Road. The petitioner plans to include the vacated property in a proposed affordable housing project that's already been discussed here tonight. The right-of-way requested to be vacated is an unimproved dead end with no plans or capacity to be extended. The vacation is needed to develop the site effectively without causing it to be divided into two parts by the current right-of-way. The entirety of Rose Garden Way Northeast currently serves only one undeveloped property. You can see that's the aerial image. This is where it would fit in with the development. This is the site plan here. As described in the staff report, the vacation meets the criteria necessary for approval. The petitioner has requested that council declare an emergency, making the ordinance effective upon second reading of the ordinance bill. To conclude, staff recommendation is to approve this vacation of right-of-way and to declare an emergency as described in the staff report. Thanks for your time, and I can take any questions now or after the public comment period.
Thank you. We have no one signed up to comment on this. Is there anyone here to speak to this public hearing issue? Okay, why don't we ask you any questions we have? Anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Councilor Cook.
Thanks for coming out tonight, Anthony. Could you just explain the nature of why the emergency is necessary or the nature of the emergency on the property?
Sure. The petitioner made it clear to us that it would, they had a funding issue that was kind of time sensitive. They were up against a deadline this month. And my understanding is that there were some issues that they had regarding the survey and engineering of this particular right-of-way. So they kind of needed it fast-tracked. So they requested that we recommend that an emergency be declared.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anthony, I have a question about the cul-de-sac that will be in, and I'm unable to tell from that or the one we had in our, no, I like the other one.
Sure.
You know, we have the same thing in our packet. Will a car that comes in from Portland Road on the cul-de-sac, will that get access into the development or not? I can't tell from the cul-de-sac. I mean, the definition of a cul-de-sac is it's not a throughway. So can somebody coming from Portland Road down that cul-de-sac to where the property to be vacated is, can they get into that side of the housing development?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any further questions? Councilor Ossick, would you like to make the motion?
I'd like to move staff recommendation, please.
Second by Nanki. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, if you would introduce the next public hearing.
The City Council will now hold a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public testimony regarding proposed amendments to Salem Revised Code chapters to establish development standards and licensing requirements for short-term rentals and accessory short-term rentals, and allowing such uses in the RA, RS, RD, RMI, RM, II, RH, CN, CO, FMU, PG, and IG zones. The criteria applicable to this application are found in Salem Revised Code, Chapter 110.085B. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing in person or in writing, or failure to provide statements or evidence with sufficient specificity to provide the applicant and the City Council an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Following the close of the public hearing, a decision will be issued and mailed to the affected neighborhood associations, anyone who participated in the public hearing in person or in writing, and anyone who requested to receive notice of the decision.
Well, Bryce, when I saw the size of this, I assumed it'd be you.
Hey, it's not as bad as the UDC. Yeah. Good evening, Mayor Bennett, members of the City Council. I'm Bryce Bishop with the Planning Division, and I'm here tonight to talk about a set of proposed amendments to the code that will bring another aspect of the sharing economy to the City of Salem other than Uber, and that's short-term rentals, the type that are found on websites like Airbnb, Flipkey, HomeAway, VBRO, those type of hosting platforms. And so the amendments before you are were brought forward tonight because the City Council had asked staff last year to explore different alternatives for how this type of short-term rental could be allowed in the city. And as you do see them in the city, and they're becoming increasingly popular, nationwide because of the advent of these home sharing websites. And so the proposed amendments are looking to update the code to be consistent with what other jurisdictions do and to allow this different form of short-term lodging to be provided in the city that's technically not allowed today. And the proposed amendments will also allow the collection of tot tax, which is an important aspect of this amendment because those that are, if you want to operate as a short-term rental without a bed and breakfast approval, there is no real way to collect that transient occupancy tax from the operator. So in terms of the background of the proposed amendment and the goals, one of the primary goals is to allow for reasonable expansion of the use of single-family dwellings while at the same time establishing suitable standards to promote neighborhood compatibility, ensure that there aren't impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods. Minimize the impact to the city's housing supply, and then also to promote a fairness between this new form of short-term rental and then also the more traditional forms of short-term rental that can be found in hotels and motels. So in terms of how the code deals with short-term lodging today, we have a broad category, that's short-term commercial lodging, and then depending on the zone it is in, there's various elements of that are allowed in the zone district. And so short-term commercial lodging includes anything where you're providing accommodations less than 30 days to patrons for commercial benefit or for compensation. So that includes hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, inns, anything that would fall within that short-term commercial lodging category. That's further defined and further refined by the bed and breakfast use, and that's a single-family dwelling where short-term commercial lodging is provided. Morning meal is provided with that use. There's currently no limit on the number of bed and breakfasts that one operator can operate, and the operator, under the current requirements, isn't required to live there and be the operator as well. So in terms of how these different types of commercial lodging are allowed, short-term commercial lodging, the broad category, that's allowed in a variety of the city's non-residential zones. And then in the city's residential zones, you have bed and breakfasts where they're the only permitted use, and that's in the multifamily zone. So in the RM1, RM2, and RH, the multifamily zones, and also the commercial office zone, instead of allowing the entire universe of short-term commercial lodging, we only specify that bed and breakfasts are allowed. They're allowed as a permitted use. You don't have to comply with any additional standards beyond the standards of the zone, the setbacks, and all those other requirements. And then on the other end of the continuum, and I forgot to explain, what I'm showing here is kind of a continuum of flexible to limited. So the commercial zones are obviously very flexible, allow a lot, a wide variety of commercial lodging activities. The multifamily zones are in the middle where they allow bed and breakfasts with no additional requirements. And then there's finally the restrictive end of the spectrum where we have those zones that only allow bed and breakfasts, but then they go one step further and require a conditional use permit in association with that to operate. The conditional use permit is about $2,721. It's a public hearing, and so there is some time and expense associated with that process. So the proposed amendments are really focusing on this more limited end of the spectrum, trying to bring flexibility into the code to allow some appropriate limited scale forms of short-term commercial lodging to be allowed without providing an impact, without having an impact to surrounding neighborhoods. So when we do that by essentially, getting rid of the concept of bed and breakfast as it is today, and we morph that in to this two new types of uses. There's short-term rental, and then there's accessory short-term rental. So the short-term rental is the broad umbrella category that encompasses the accessory short-term rentals. And so short-term rentals are essentially a bed and breakfast. You don't have to live there today. You don't have to, well, under bed and breakfast, you have to provide a morning meal today. Under the proposed amendment, you wouldn't. And then the accessory short-term rental, which is a subcategory or a specific type, that is where we really introduce the most flexibility to the code by limiting, allowing it to be operated without a conditional use, limit the number of guest rooms, and also limit the number of guests in order to minimize the impact. So in a little more detail here, short-term rentals, as I indicated, they're pretty much just a bed and breakfast today with the requirement for the morning meal eliminated. A short-term rental, you would qualify as a short-term rental if you are not living in the home that you're renting, and so you just have a home and you don't live there and you're renting it out. And also, regardless if you live there or not, you're renting out 3 or more guest rooms. So that's the requirement for being a short-term rental. Like bed and breakfast today, they're still allowed in single-family dwelling units. They're allowed in the same zones that bed and breakfasts are still allowed in today. They still require a conditional use permit in the low-density single-family zones, residential agriculture, single-family residential, and duplex residential, the RA, RS, and RD. And they're also continue to be permitted in those zones where bed and breakfasts are permitted today. The conditional use process for short-term rentals allows for conditions to be placed on the operation of the use to ensure that it fits within the character of the neighborhood. That could be like limits on the occupancy, limits on the number of guest rooms that could be rented, or duration. And like bed and breakfast today, there's still a minimum one space of off-street parking required per guest room that's provided. And then there's also a new license requirement that expands on what the current license is for bed and breakfast today. So the accessory short-term rentals, as I mentioned, is really where the most changes come and the most additional flexibility comes into play. And so instead of a conditional use permit, it would be proposed to be allowed as a special use, that this use would be allowed in the city's single-family zones, the RA, RS, and RD zones, as well as the limited intensity area of the Fairview mixed-use zone and the Capitol Mall zone. An accessory short-term rental is allowed in a single-family dwelling unit or a duplex. The operator has to live in the home and operate there. And the operator can be an owner or a renter. The renter can do it if they have the property owner's approval. And then there's that limit of not being able to rent out more than 2 guest rooms at a time, and then a maximum of 2 guests per guest room. So there's a maximum occupancy requirement too. And then because it's a special use in those zones, we established some additional standards. You have to be the resident and live there a minimum of 270 days out of the year. You can you have the flexibility to be a host and invite people to stay with you an unlimited number of days out of the year. Or you could choose to be gone for a total of 95 days cumulative out of the calendar year and rent out your home. So if you're going on a vacation and want to maybe swap homes with somebody else, or for a couple weeks or a month or so, there's that ability to still be an accessory short-term rental and then have somebody there without you being there, but you would also have to have a contact while you're gone in that circumstance. There's also a limit that it can only be used for lodging. You can't use it for gatherings and events or other types of activities, so it's just there to provide overnight accommodations. We're proposing no minimum off-street parking requirement for this use, and like short-term rentals, there's a license that is required. In terms of the license requirements, these apply both to short-term rentals, the broad category, and the accessory short-term rental subcategory. There's a requirement to have a local contact, and that is either the operator themselves or a licensed property management company that can be available to address issues if they arise during the operation of the rentals. There's a requirement to maintain a guest registry that keeps track of the number of nights the home is rented, the number of rooms, the number of guests, whether it was a hosted rental or a non-hosted rental. Also a requirement to register with the city's finance division to pay the transient occupancy tax. There's a requirement that they show proof of liability insurance to operate the short-term rental or the accessory short-term rental for that purpose, other than it being primarily for just a home. There's safety requirement that's part of the licensing requirements, and that includes an inspection, which would initially be done as a self-certification, and then it would be followed by a physical inspection by compliance services staff. And then after that, the short-term rental, which is the one where you don't have to live there, that would be inspected every year and have to get renewed every year. And then accessory short-term rentals, it would be an inspection every 5 years following that. And then any license or any advertisement to list your property on any of the websites or any other listing, you have to include your city-issued license number in any advertisement. So people know that it's an approved, legitimate short-term rental or accessory short-term rental. So we did receive public comments, prior to this council hearing tonight, both at the Planning Commission and a few that have come in since. Comments range, about, 50-50. It's kind of split, it seems like. But comments in support, they feel that this type of short-term rental provides a great way to boost income for folks, helps them to stay in their homes, and also provides an alternative way for folks to visit the city and experience it in a different way than they would if they stayed in the traditional hotel or motel. And then comments in opposition, raise concerns about parking, noise, congestion, potential crime, and impacts on property values. And those are all discussed in the staff report that you have before you. We did receive comments from Airbnb. They identified several suggested revisions, and staff responded to those in the staff report. And we also did receive comments from the Southwest Association of Neighbors, the Swan Neighborhood Association, as well as the SCAN, the South Central Association of Neighborhood Association. And Swan opposed the short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods in the RS zone. And SCAN supported the concept of accessory short-term rentals with some additional requirements that are identified in the comments you received from them. And they also oppose short-term rentals in residential zones, so the ones where you don't have to live there. They oppose that on the basis that an impact on the housing supply. And staff would, respond to that by saying that we're trying to not take anything away from what's allowed today, so you can do a bed and breakfast today, not being limited on the number of bed and breakfasts you can operate, and you don't have to live there. So we tried to just take bed and breakfasts and then convert them to short-term rentals, just change the name, eliminate the requirement for the morning meal. So we really haven't, on the short-term rental side, done anything that would substantially change or have an impact on the housing supply than what's currently allowed under the code as it exists today with bed and breakfasts. And so then finally, as indicated in the staff report, we feel that the proposed amendments are consistent with the code amendment approval criteria included in SRC Chapter 110, and it provides some additional flexibility by allowing small-scale, limited types of short-term housing in residential zones where conditional use would be required today. And we establish license requirements and inspections to ensure safety and minimize impacts on the neighborhood and to promote compatibility. So we would recommend that the council advance the proposed amendments to second reading for enactment.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead then with the public portion of the public hearing, and then we'll ask questions of staff. Jeff Schumacher, Mr. Schumacher, you represent SCAN Neighborhood Association. You'll be allowed 5 minutes if you want to take it.
Hopefully I can finish in 3.
Okay.
So Jeff Schumacher with Chair of SCAN. And I'll start with our qualified support for the accessory dwelling units. The few of the things that we would ask on the parking, we think it's reasonable to require 1 off-street parking spot. I know the staff has suggested that not requiring off-street parking is an accommodation to the older neighborhoods that have less parking capacity. And I guess our position is that sort of unnecessarily rewards the few to the detriment of the many. We think it's a fair hurdle that our neighbors should have to clear if they want to operate their residence as an accessory short-term rental. SCAN and probably some of the other neighborhood associations already hear from concerned neighbors. We routinely hear from them that they want more restrictive on-street parking. And we think that this would, by not requiring 1 off-street spot for this, we think it would somewhat exacerbate a current problem we already face. The second condition, we think it's reasonable that accessory short-term rental residents, that they display license info and a local representative contact info at the residence. I think the city has proposed that that information would be held by the city and would be available upon request. Our feeling is, though, if there's a complaint to be made, it'll probably be over a weekend, and city offices are probably not open, and we would like the neighbors to have the ability to contact the owner or their representative And I think that that actually provides a benefit to the owner in that it gives them the opportunity to be the first line of defense if there is an issue, rather than calling the city or calling the police. We think this puts it on the owner, and we think that's fair all the way around. Let's see. I guess the third condition then, we think that the city should notify neighborhood associations when there's an initial or renewal license application. I think currently the city does something similar when there's Oregon Liquor Control Commission change. They will send out a notification to the neighborhood association, and we have a very brief window to provide comments, not to hold the process up, just to maybe highlight some problems that the city hadn't been made aware of previously. We think that by giving the neighborhood associations a short window to provide the city staff with some advisory comments is a small concession and could be a benefit to the city staff. Perhaps this is a problem home that nothing has risen to a high level yet, but if there are problems that can be addressed in the application process, it might make life better for the neighbors. And I guess my final, moving on to the short-term rentals, we do oppose those in all residential zones. We think that the city should be encouraging housing for permanent residents and not residences, and not lowering the bar for the short-term rentals. Short-term rentals, they're probably more lucrative than long-term rentals, so there's certainly I think there's probably an incentive for investors to purchase single-family residences, whereas if you don't codify that, it may not be the same. It may not be as enticing. And short-term rentals certainly pose more. They have a greater potential for disruption in a neighborhood than a long-term rental. So, I guess I'll make one final point since I do have some time. The definition of guest room, I think we had some questions that perhaps it wasn't well defined in the staff's proposed code. It doesn't really say what a guest room is, and we wouldn't want somebody that had a very small 1 or 2 bedroom home turning their living room or some other area of their house into a guest room. And I'm not sure I have the best answer, but perhaps tax records or the assessor's records, whatever the county or city might have, I think they identify the number of bedrooms in a home, and that might be a place you can refer your definition to. Just as I don't really see the harm in doing that, and by leaving the definition of guest room open, I think it has the potential for somebody to abuse it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you, and thank you for coming down to providing comments. I read through Scan's comments, and I thought they were really interesting. One of my questions, though, is does Scan oppose bed and breakfasts that are currently operating?
No.
Okay.
But
So my understanding of this is that the short-term rentals would include bed and breakfast-like establishments. So I was just kind of curious what maybe Scan's thought was, is there something about bed and breakfasts that are more attractive than short-term rentals?
they have a resident manager, which is more attractive. And I'm not sure, but they do have a resident manager typically. And
Well, I believe the code now is that you don't have to have one. It can be, the owner can live away and just operate as a bed and breakfast. They just have to provide a meal in some way
Okay.
to it. But
I think Scan's position, if I can, I am not an expert on what the code currently says. I think our feeling is there's no need to lower the bar for bed and breakfasts. And what this proposes would certainly do that. I don't know, do bed and breakfasts have to get a conditional use permit? And
they
this would
do.
away with
Yeah,
that?
they have to get a conditional use and a license, and they just have to provide a hot meal. That's the difference between this currently proposed code and the one we have now. So, thank you.
Any further? Okay, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you for coming down, Mr. Schumacher. I appreciate how difficult it is to be the president of the SCAN neighborhood group. I got a couple questions. First one is about the parking. It seems to me that the struggle has been, if the code requires more off-street parking, that may end up to paving over a front lawn or a portion of front lawn. And I know we really got into this over a commercial use in the neighborhood a while ago, or having, you know, some way making it look less like a neighborhood and more like somebody who's renting out rooms all the time, like a boarding house almost.
Right.
So, you know, how do you weigh the fact if you require parking on the lot, not in the street, it may lessen the effect of the livability and making it look like a neighborhood?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a great answer to that. It's certainly an issue. I guess for SCAN's purposes, we're looking at it from a standpoint of every few months we hear from a neighbor who says, hey, parking on my block is really tight because we're bordered by businesses and schools, and this would just add to that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then I guess this is self-evident, but the license display, you want something that can be seen from the street, or somebody can...
Yeah, or just, it doesn't have to be a giant sign, but, you know, if there's something going on a Friday night, we think it's reasonable that a neighbor could get the number of somebody to call, as opposed to saying, well, boy, first thing Monday morning, I'm going to call the city, or alternatively, calling the police. It might be nice to just call the owner and say, hey, there's a problem here.
And you know, I'm just, I don't know that I support this or not, but I suppose there could be some provision that says neighbors within X number of feet receive notification. You know, it's
Absolutely.
250 on some things, it's 50 on something else.
Sure.
Yeah, so that would...
Yeah, neighbor, exactly.
Yeah. See, because I also think of that if there's something that's visible there from the street, that again is more likely to detract from the neighborhood ambiance potentially.
That's true, and a simple notification to neighbors within a radius of the home would be a great compromise. That way people could file it away, and if they ever have a problem, they know who to call.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming down tonight, and thank you for preparing this statement. It really helps bring to light the things that were addressed in the neighborhood association when we were there.
I can't take credit for that. I think Roz,
Thank you, Roz. I was looking at her. So as far as contacting information for the neighbors, would you feel that that would be best done as a neighborhood chair in a neighborhood forum, the same way that you have police reports or zoning changes that come forward as staff, or would you see that better as doing a direct mail, direct contact to homes? Who would be, how would you feel that information would be best effective to get out to neighbors in that way?
So the contact info, that information?
Yeah, information about this person's wanting to put their house up, and we're letting people know as a courtesy, because if it's coming through on neighborhood association night, it might be a late night for people. And if it's coming through on notices, it might generate more interest.
I'd probably be open to either. I don't mind it coming through the neighborhood associations if people want to show up to one of our meetings and talk about that particular application. I think that's fine. I don't view it, I don't think it's the role of the neighborhood association to try to block the application. I mean, that's the staff's job, and it would allow for the neighborhood association to perhaps distribute the contact info to those who are interested, and or provide advisory comments to city staff about that particular application.
And some of the issues that come up periodically within your neighborhood that would be kind of red flags for someone wanting to do this would be?
Oh, from time to time we hear about homes where there's a lot of off-street parking. You know, they might have 5 cars and eight people living there, and they all seem to be, you know, college students or several families. I think we just hear more of those issues. Like I said, I don't think SCAN's opposed to, I mean, obviously this is already going on, and the city should acknowledge it and should try to regulate it, but also I think the city's ability to control it is going to be limited. And we would just like to see the neighbors have some tools available to them to have some recourse, not to stop it, just to have some input along the way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schumacher. Scott Snyder.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Scott Snyder. I manage the Grand Hotel downtown here, and I'm also the chairperson for the Salem Area Lodging Association. And so I'm testifying on behalf of the Lodging Association. We do support the city helping to establish consistent protections for customers of services of companies like Airbnb and the other companies that Bryce had acknowledged here tonight. We believe that by protections, we think that this means that there's a level playing field with the different types of licensing and inspections that the hotels, motels, beds and breakfasts, and even campgrounds have to adhere to, that we must maintain and submit. And we definitely hear the concerns that have been addressed already tonight. The residential communities have of impacts of potential parking and livability, and just we do trust that through the course that the City Council and the city staff are working on, that there will be a great compromise reached, and that it'll make this a win-win for the city as well as the residents that wish to open their homes up to this opportunity and still maintain the livability of Salem's neighborhoods. What I've come to do is definitely highlight the emphasis on making sure that there's the taxes that are to be paid are being collected by the city, and that those are being used to help promote tourism within our area, and that it's being done in a timely fashion. On Friday, I've got a copy of an article that was in the Portland Journal Friday the 5th of May that I'll hand out that highlights the efforts that Portland did to be the first community to require collection, remittance of taxes on all bookings in the city, and that Newport and Lincoln City mimicked what Portland had done, and they're being successful in collecting. The template is available to Salem, and so we don't need to reinvent the wheel as far as making sure that taxes are being collected on appropriate rentals. And we, again, the lodging community understands that it's happening now. There's hundreds of residences that are advertising their wares, and we want to make sure that it's regulated and that it's done appropriately to not negatively impact the community. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mr. Snyder. So just to make sure I understand, your primary issue then is the tax collection, making
Correct,
sure that's
yes.
okay.
The 9% as well as the 1.8 for the state.
Okay. McCoy, Councilor McCoy.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for coming down.
Yes.
One of the things that raises a question in my mind is how often do you get inspected annually?
Correct, yes. Every December.
So, like clockwork?
Yes.
They don't try to surprise you at all?
Nope. They
we
notify
nice
it.
guys?
Well, they make an appointment because they want to make sure that they can get into a certain number of rooms and inspect, so it's very open.
That must be a cleaning frenzy at the end of November, huh? I guess one of my points is a 5-year inspection cycle raises a question mark for me. I mean, I get it from the city's point of view. We're going to have to hire a bunch of people if we're going to go in and out of these places. But once every 5 years, a whole lot of bad things could go wrong there in between year 1 and year 5 in the next inspection. Do you have any thoughts on that or a position?
It is concerning, but I understand the monetary. I don't know how much it costs for one of Brady's staff members to come and do our inspection. They're there for several hours, but we've got 193 rooms, and they're inspecting a certain percentage as well as the public areas and things like that. But, in a home, it might be a 20-minute appointment, but you still have to coordinate somebody there to let them in, to follow up on any findings that they've got, and then the inspector has to come back and re-inspect if there's deficiencies located. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Larry Weber.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Larry Weber, Ward 7 resident. My wife spoke before the council a little more than a year ago. about the problems and disruptions we face when a property owner across the street made a single-family 5-bedroom home into a commercial business property. He ran a short-term rental with no on-site presence. Joan expressed the impact that we had. It was, to say the least, negative. She talked about the stress was significant and it was a daily concern. But we do want to thank the city tonight, once again, for enforcing the city code and restoring our neighborhood to its intended purpose. And we face the ugly side of the short-term rental. Our neighborhood was impacted. And since that time, we've taken an active role and interest in this issue. Just recently, and we had passed out an article from the Oregonian regarding the challenges Portland City Council is having with short-term rental offerings. I was shocked to know that since 2014, just 3 years ago, they have 3,000 short-term rental listings in Portland now, according to the article. And only 1 in 4, 22% they said, is actually licensed. They also talked about Airbnb and HomeAway as being, quote, an antagonistic vacation rental sites. They're not allowing reasonable audits of their home listings. But can you imagine 3,000 homes being taken out of the housing inventory in Portland, Oregon, and the displacement of those tenants? So we're asking the City Council, don't let Salem make the same mistake Portland did. Joan and I actually oppose short-term rentals in single-family residential neighborhoods. However, we recognize that the proposals in front of the City Council, we're actually offering several solutions, several suggestions, and I've passed that out. The first one I just want to highlight. We recommend the Salem City Code, revised code, prohibit absent property owners from operating short-term rentals in single-family residential zones. We feel that a homeowner or a long-term renter is continuously on site. They have a vested interest in ensuring health, safety, security of guests, and that of their connected neighbors, and in protecting all properties. I have a lot more to say, but I have it written down for you to read. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councilor Kaiser.
Thanks, Larry, for coming down.
Oh,
I
you bet.
had the same question, I guess, for you as I did for the chair of SCAN, and that's, so bed and breakfasts currently operate under conditional use permit in
Right.
residential zones, and do you support those now that are currently operating?
No, my first recommendation is to actually close that loophole. If you're a property owner and you're offering your facility as a short-term rental, you should be on site, and we should close that loophole for what you're calling bed and breakfast.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor McCoy.
Larry, thanks for coming down, and I appreciate your written testimony. That's great. Do you, when you're talking about having the property owner, is your concern more with where they're renting the house and the owner's not there for a month, like when you were having your problems and, there's
That's
nobody
the bottom
there?
line.
So, but do you have a problem where the owner's present and they're renting 1 or 2 rooms in the neighborhood?
No, I don't have a problem with that. Matter of fact, I think we can find common ground on that.
So the testimony is more specific to that, allowing the owners to be gone for 3 months and still rent the house and not be there.
No, I don't think that should be allowed. I think that you should be on site if you're operating short-term rental. And I'm only talking about single-family residential neighborhoods.
Any further questions? Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
George Struble.
Mayor Bennett and City Council members, I'm George Struble. I live in the Court Chemeketa Historic Neighborhood. And thank you for the sidewalk repair and the new bridge that is going to come sometime later this year. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem, of which I am a member. As a fundraiser, our church would like to rent out guest rooms in our members' homes in the style of a bed and breakfast. The lodging would be to facilitate out-of-town guests for the solar eclipse August 21st. We have no interest in doing this in an ongoing basis. All funds collected would go to our church, none to the hosts themselves. This could benefit our local businesses for the goods and services the additional guests to our city would purchase. I do not believe this would create problems for the city or for our neighbors. It should be a no-brainer. But as I read the proposed city ordinance, even a one-shot event like this would require license and inspection, which would make it completely unfeasible. So we request an amendment which could be targeted quite narrowly, something like a license is not required for a short-term accessory rental of up to 5 nights, once per calendar year, all of whose proceeds go to a nonprofit organization. You or the city council or the city staff could word it better, very possibly. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions, Councilor Anderson?
Thank you for coming down, Mr. Struble, excuse me. My question actually doesn't relate to this, although thank you for presenting this. I know that your neighborhood has some bed and breakfasts that are there and have some signs that are operating. Have you, as neighbors, found any problems with any of those B&Bs that are in the Court Chemeketa Historic District?
I'm not even aware that any exist.
Well, there's
if
one
that's
on Mill
invisible.
Creek, very close to your neighborhood, but that's
Okay.
good. So if you're not aware that any exist, if they do exist, you haven't had problems.
That's an answer to your question,
There we
yes.
go. Thank you very much.
And I might just say, I have no problem paying the tax
Okay.
on these rentals.
Okay, thank you. Eric Miller.
Eric Miller, Ward 7. Thank you for the opportunity to include my testimony in your discussion about short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. At the March Planning Commission meeting, I spoke against the practice and continue to be in opposition. My reasons are as follows. 1, if people want to make money in rental property, they can purchase property in areas zoned for that purpose already. There are many opportunities that abound for them. 2, our neighborhood has already experienced the negative effects of a short-term rental. This rental was operated illegally for over a year. Neighbors experienced traffic congestion, loss of privacy, loss of permanent and temporary parking, disruption of mail service, and late-night partying. Not their own. 3, short-term rentals will weaken neighborhoods because people won't know who their neighbors are. How do you have a neighborhood watch group when you don't even know what you're watching for? Are these people neighbors, renters, guests of renters, or people scoping out the neighborhood to do bad things? 4, by knowing our neighbors, we can serve as a defense against crime. And 5, short-term rentals exacerbates the affordable housing shortage by taking property out of use for long-term renters and owners. Apparently, my testimony and rhetorical skills were ineffective because they had little effect on the proposal before you today. So I'm here again speaking, but with a different approach. If the City Council must have short-term rentals, they can develop policies that will help prevent potential problems. First, you can require that all units be owner-occupied when they are rented. Keeping the owner on the premises can be a watchful eye on the property. Make sure people park in correct places and that noise is kept to an acceptable level. Second, you can limit the number of short-term rental units a property can rent to 1 or 2. Homes with 3 or more bedrooms can create a party-like atmosphere and create disturbances. For larger homes, the property really is no longer a home. It could be a small motel. Third, ensure that fees paid to the city for the right to have a short-term rental are sufficient to handle the extra staff needed for fee collection, licensing, code compliance and litigation, inspections, and complaints the city will experience. Fourth, establish a level playing field between people who have short-term rentals and those who own other forms of rental property. For example, all short-term units should comply with the American with Disabilities Act for accessibility, should not discriminate against protected classes, and they should also be inspected similarly. Fifth, require owners of short-term rentals to inform neighbors who to contact when there are concerns. These contacts should include the owner and owner's representatives, as well as departments within the city to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. In conclusion, I'm proud that my neighborhood association, the Southwest Association of Neighbors, unanimously agreed to oppose short-term rentals. That's my first choice, too. However, if the city must have them, it should adopt more neighborhood-friendly policies like those I have mentioned.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you for coming down and giving this testimony, Eric. It's really great to see the suggestions on there. I also wanted to thank you for the motion to help strengthen the neighborhoods rather than have them weakened by this event. Out of these 5 policies, are there a few that stand out as being the most urgent? I know in my ward, having that experience that I received quite a few emails about, people are very passionate about this issue. And it would seem that specifically the first requirement of being owner-occupied would have addressed a lot of issues that came up. Is that your feeling as well, or also the additional code compliance enforcement aspect? What are you thinking?
Well, the first step is to try and prevent problems from happening in the first place. I think that's what everybody would like to do, so everybody can have respectful property owners and people can use property in an appropriate fashion. So I think having the on-site managers is critical to that oversight. The other thing is that by limiting the number of units that can be occupied, you're not creating, 6 different families that could come in. I have a house that has 6 bedrooms. If I wanted to rent out my house, I could fill it with a lot of people, and my neighbors wouldn't be very happy. Matter of fact, I suggested that to a couple of them as I was walking down the street talking about the issue. I said, hey, how would you like it if I turned my house into a short-term rental? And I kind of got this horrified look on my face, and not my face, their face. And it's kind of like, well, would you like to write a letter to the city council? And it was like, that was almost more aghasting for them because it was like, ooh, I have to get involved and do something. So I think those 2 would be good as a way to solve problems. That communication piece in number 5 about notifying, not just having a sign in the houses, but distributing a flyer to your neighbors. I think that's a sign of responsible property management, and I think good property owners, and I know that there are good short-term rental managers out there, shouldn't be opposed to doing something like that.
Thank you very much. Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. You probably know the question that's coming.
I do, and I have a response for it, too. It's a little bit different.
Let me ask it first, and then I have another question for you as well. But what do you think of the currently operated bed and breakfasts that are operating within the city?
Well, as a city council member, you probably have learned that you don't usually hear from people when things are going well. I mean, you did hear about the bridge. In fact, I was one of the people that went back and forth on it on Sunday, was happy to see a great community participating in that. I've never lived next to a bed and breakfast. I can't comment on the goodness or the badness or whatever it is, but I can say, like with anything, like with any profession or any occupation or service, you've got some that manage their operations very well and are very dutiful about making sure that they're friendly with their neighbors, the guests have a wonderful time, and then there are others that really don't care, and it's like, all I really want to do is get your money and be done with it. So I don't have an experience with that, and probably if those things were operated and I had a wonderful experience with the bed and breakfast next to me, you probably wouldn't see me here today.
Okay. Then my follow-up question, you had expressed concern about possibly having an absentee property owner and then renting out many rooms to many different parties. Am I correct in that?
Well, I suggested that I could rent out my house if this goes through and fill it up with an enormous number of people.
Right. So in the proposed code, if there was a resident family was away, they would not be allowed to have multiple bookings. So they could only book through only one party could actually book at a time. And I wasn't sure if you knew about that in the proposed code, that was part of that, was not having multiple bookings. So if there wasn't the owner wasn't there, they could only have one booking at a time and not multiple bookings.
Well, my understanding, multiple bookings could mean that I'm making a booking. I'm taking my parents, my siblings, my children, my grandchildren, and I can fill up my house with one booking versus having 6 or 7 different bookings going on at the same time.
Yeah, that's correct. It's just in your testimony you had talked about having different families and different people that I was interpreting that as meaning people who didn't know each other that were
Yeah,
filling the
either
house.
way, my point is, if we're going to do these things, I think it would be prudent to limit the occupancy to one or two, or having one or two bedrooms available for people to use, instead of opening up 6 of them or something like that, regardless of whether or not they're one party or multiple parties.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jack Ogami?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jack Ogami. I live in Ward 7 on Sumac Drive. I was one of the ones that had the unfortunate experience of having an illegal renter next door to me. And thanks to the city, they fixed it. They resolved the situation, but it took 3 to 4 weeks. So one of the issues I'm bringing up, and I'd like to put on the table, is I don't know if the city has the infrastructure right now to administer the law, because the law as proposed seems like it's going to be complex. There's going to be a lot of, you must do this, you must do this, you must do that. Being in the tax business and the compliance business for almost 40 years, I know it's going to be hard and you're going to need a lot of compliance officers. The ones you do work really hard and they do a good job. The other thing that sort of frustrated me was that my neighbor created a private entrance and they created a walled-off area for their guests to stay. It really wasn't their guests. They were running a motel operation. I would assume that if you're going to invite guests into your home, that you're going to be very careful to make sure that your family's safe, you're safe, your goods are safe. That's the level of care I would expect that people would be expecting in the neighborhood if you're inviting someone into your home. Then you can trust that people are using good judgment, right, that the community would share. So anyway, other thing is the staged rollout. One of the things, rather than all or nothing, I suggest maybe thinking about staged rollout. Then you could see what the compliance burden will be on your organization, as well as is it working or not. And the last area to do the staged rollout would be single-family residential. And then you could implement the lessons that you learned in other areas. And then finally, something that's always worked good in other areas is a good neighbor policy. Make continued use as a transient rental dependent on how you've treated your neighbors and your neighbors' experience. So at the 1-year mark, poll the neighbors, have they been a good neighbor or not? So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions? Councilor Cook.
I wanted to thank you for coming down tonight. I know the story from next door, from the email. I know we talked over the phone. I really do appreciate you coming down and talking about this, and also being so thoughtful and wanting to make sure that we have the ability to enforce if it's something that we go through, and if it's something that we don't go through, that we understand how things can operate. And if we don't have the tools to enforce, that's something that's necessary.
Yes.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Carol Lawson.
My name is Carol Lawson. I own 1811 Chemeketa Street Northeast, which is the bed and breakfast that they're talking about. We went through a conditional use permitting process a little over a year ago. It has worked out very well for us and for the neighborhood. We do not live on the property. We have a caretaker. As we were about to file the paperwork to go through the conditional use process, it was suggested to us that we get together with the Northeast Neighborhood Group, which we did. We even held off filing so that we could work through the concerns of the Northeast Neighborhood Group. I went door to door and I spoke to all the neighbors and explained what I wanted to do and why. We did file the paperwork. We did have the public comment period, and it has worked really well. I don't believe that there are any issues that cannot be resolved by working closely with the neighbors in the neighborhood. One of the things that gave me a little bit of heartburn in the beginning was that one parking space for each bedroom, which limited the number of people that could rent the house. I've come to find out that that actually turned out really well. It keeps an appropriate number of people in the house. It keeps the neighborhood from being overwhelmed. I have made sure that every one of the neighbors has the contact information of our caretaker and has my contact information. I love that neighborhood. I'm finding that the people who stay there love that neighborhood too. We've had people who would not have chosen to stay in Salem except for they found this particular house and they were going to an event in Corvallis, or they had family in Portland and Eugene, and this was a meeting point. I think it's shown the city really well, and I think if the way the rules are currently written, I think that that does provide the safeguards that are necessary. And as an owner, I'm finding that they're actually very helpful, and they've helped me a lot too. So I wanted to thank you for the thoughtfulness of the process.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Lewis.
Thanks for coming down. It's nice to see somebody who's in the business here tonight. I'm just curious, do you charge your renters a security deposit or a damage fee?
We have a cleaning fee. I go through a company that works with Airbnb and Flipkey and all of the others. They're a management company. They carry insurance. So I have insurance through them, and everyone who stays at the property is required to pay the $49 or whatever it is for insurance. We have had a couple of claims, but making sure that there is some kind of insurance or some way to pay for those claims, I think is very important.
And the sites that you belong to, is there any mechanism that can be used for you to report to them if you've had a situation, let's say, where a renter did something that caused the police to come to the facility?
Yes, and that was one of the reasons why I chose to go with and I'm not trying to do an advertisement, but the company I work with is called Evolve Vacation Rentals. And Evolve Vacation Rentals, they handle the money, they handle the credit card transactions, they do background checks if requested on the people that are going to stay in your home. They did quite a check on me to make sure that I had the conditional use permit, that I was set up to pay taxes. They connected me with a company to pay those taxes. There is the ability for the renters to report me to Evolve, and for me to report the renters to Evolve if there is any kind of issue that needs to be worked out. And then everything is documented. So if the city ever wanted to see any kind of transactional report, that is available. And mine has like 3 entries in it. I'm happy to show it to you. But, and that's one of the reasons why I chose it, was for the transparency sake and the insurance.
And last question, if I could. I believe you said that you did not occupy the facility when the renters are there, that you had a maintenance person or a...
So I do have a maintenance person, but the one I'm talking about is a caretaker, which is different.
Okay, and is that caretaker on site?
That caretaker is not on site. The caretaker lives in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you for coming down, and I also want to thank you. It seems like you've done exemplary work in cooperating with the neighborhood, and that's what those of us who live in those neighborhoods, I don't live in yours, but I live in another close downtown neighborhood that's very good. The main distinction between the old B&Bs and the new short-term rentals, which I wish would just be called B&Bs because I get it all confused, but is that you don't have to provide breakfast in the new short-term rentals. And I'm just curious if you could comment on that, because to me that's kind of one of the attractions of a B&B is you get this great breakfast in the morning and the local papers and that kind of stuff. And so what would happen if all of a sudden you didn't have to provide breakfast? Would you still provide it? Would you not provide it?
So we would make it available, but what I'm finding is that more often than not, more than 60% of the time, people don't want the breakfast. So we rent on those sites that are normally vacation home sites because we want to rent the entire house to one renter, whether that's a family or a group, or my husband and I felt that that was a more controlled environment, and through discussions with the neighborhood association, they felt the same way. We do provide breakfast, and usually after the first day, they're saying, thank you very much, really nice thought, appreciate. And I also provide things like that they can take home with them. Hazelnut pancake mix made in Oregon jams, local soaps, things that are representative of the area, and they don't often even do that. I mean, they come to enjoy the city, and they really want us to just go away.
Councilor Cook.
Thanks so much for coming down tonight. I have a question about the permitting fee. I believe, do you remember how much you paid?
So, yeah, I did some quick math on this. The entire conditional use permit, because we did the site survey, we had some drawings done because I didn't have some of the skills to do that. We were about $5,000 into it.
Okay. And you were able to recoup those fairly quickly? I mean, you said you had a short
Not entirely.
ledger.
It's not as lucrative as people think.
Okay.
But it's stable.
And out of the suggestions that came from the neighbors tonight, it sounds like you've mostly done that voluntarily. How would this affect, how would you see this moving forward if that were to move from more of a voluntary to a suggested to a required to, what would you see as barriers?
There are times when you have to codify good behavior, and if there is a concern, and if it hasn't been the experience of the neighborhood associations that people go to the neighborhood associations, perhaps there be suggestions and steps that be taken. I did notice that some of the things that are in the requirements are things that came out of the discussions with the neighborhood association that we had, such as a caretaker that is in the area if you're out of area. So I don't think that there's any of the concerns that were voiced that can't be resolved through conversations. Again, as an owner, going into it being a little bit irritated by the limitation on one parking space for each room. Now on the other side of that and seeing how it really does preserve the neighborhood and how the neighborhood is really kind of blind to this being an operating entity, and I heard a concern about houses won't be kept up, and I would say yes, they will, because people won't come if they look awful. And so that is, I'm spending more money now on yard and maintenance and that sort of thing than I did when I was a homeowner. Not that my house ever looked bad, but there's a particularness because I want people to love it and come back and re-experience my house again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you did with Northeast Neighbors, too, that you really did a model job on this. I recall it for the period you were doing it. It was quite a project for you, I know.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Barbara Palermo.
Hi there. Can you hear me
You're
okay?
back.
I'm back. I know. It's been a long time, huh?
It has.
My name is Barbara Palermo, and I have been an Airbnb superhost for the last year. There are currently 88 active Airbnb hosting sites in Salem, according to Airbnb's website, and we each offer a unique experience, I think. 40% of those listings in Salem are non-hosted sites, where there is, I agree, there is a potential for misuse and perhaps other types of problems, and these should be closely regulated. However, the other 60% of the listings in Salem are people like myself who enjoy renting out a guest room to travelers within the home where we reside. We are present when our guests arrive and throughout their entire stay, so if there were any problems, it would be quickly resolved. Last year, 92 people stayed with my husband and myself, usually in sets of 1 or 2. All of them were kind, tidy, quiet, respectful, and interesting to chat with. I have never encountered a single problem with noise, theft, or anything else, and parking is not an issue in my West Salem neighborhood. Now, if I understand the proposed ordinance correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, hosted sites like my own would be required to maintain a guest registry, pass a home safety inspection every 5 years, have liability insurance, and apply for a $150 permit annually. The guest registry is not a problem. I already do that. As for the inspection, if my house is considered safe enough for me and my family, then I don't understand why I should be subject to an inspection for guests. As for the insurance requirement, I already have homeowners liability insurance. That's not an issue. But having to purchase an annual permit is what I think is unreasonable. Mr. Bishop explained to me that the purpose of the $150 fee is to review the application and pay for the inspection. But if the inspections are now only required every 5 years, then why should I have to pay the $150 fee every year? That's not reasonable. I understand the city wants to charge our guests a 9% tax. I understand that. It's common in other cities. I think the guests are used to that. However, we as hosts should not be burdened with trying to collect and submit this tax on the city's behalf. I don't think that's reasonable. I think Airbnb has more experience with that. They already have a system in place. I think they want to do it, and I think that they should be able to. Please don't make that our responsibility. Sharing my home with travelers has been a very rewarding experience. I'm asking you to please don't spoil it by over-regulating it. Please do not make me notify my neighbors, because I don't think I should have to do that either. I'm currently hosting a nice young woman all the way from the Netherlands, and she is here with me tonight, Myrta. I couldn't convince her to speak, but she's here offering her support. So that is all I have to say.
Great.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Barbara. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Steve.
Thanks for coming down, Barbara, and really interesting and informative. It's nice to hear from somebody who actually does it here while we're trying to figure out what goes on. Have you, of those 94 nights, I think you said, or was it 94 guests?
92 people.
And how many nights that was? But all those evenings, was just you were renting 1 or 2 rooms, or?
I just have one guest room, and it's right next to mine. And it was 92 people over the year, usually in sets of 1 or 2, usually for anywhere from 1 to, I think the longest I had was 9 nights, but it's typically 1, 2, 3 nights.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I'm getting more, because now I have all these great reviews. I'm getting more people, and they're staying longer. So now I'm getting 5 and 6 nights, but it's been really fun. It's been.
But it's all been that one room, and you're not
just the
doing
one room.
the absentee landlord and renting it for a month and 2 months or whatever.
They just stay in my guest
thanks.
room.
Councilor Cook?
Thanks for coming down tonight. So the $150 annual fee, if that registration fee were to not be annually or were to be less, would your opinion change on it? And are you able to recoup that quickly, or is that something you would raise your rates at Airbnb? Do you set your own, or through Flipkey or Vimo? I'm not sure which site you use.
It's Airbnb,
Okay.
and I set my own price, and I charge $60 a night, and I made $5,000 last year. And we're going to retire in 3 years to Italy, so we're saving all that money. And when we're in Italy, we're going to supplement our retirement income by doing Airbnb there. So we thought, well, let's practice here. So that's why we did it, and it's been really, really fun and very rewarding. I guess I don't mind paying for having a permit. And I think even $150, if it's one time, would probably be okay.
Do you mean one time per year, or
No,
do you mean one time?
I mean one
total?
time. I don't think we should have to pay it annually, especially if we're not having an inspection. I don't understand what we're paying for, and that seems a bit of an overreaction. I think a one-time fee would be good. I think if it could be less than $150, that would be good.
Sorry, just to follow up.
Because we're not a commercial enterprise, you know.
So on the flip side of fees, I'm going to use the other F word, which is fines. So we know you're an exemplary host with all these wonderful stars, and you've had this great experience. But what about the people coming from my ward that have had this horrible, horrible experience?
In hosted sites, though?
Well, is that something that they can get bad reviews, but right now, I think that's something that we're thinking about looking at as a code. How would you feel if there were certain restrictions that if this happens, you lose the privilege of being able to have this opportunity to apply for a permit for Airbnb, or you have to take a break for a certain amount of time if there are X number of complaints or it's a problem issue?
Sure.
Does Airbnb have a follow-up system where if you get a certain number of complaints or issues that you are revoked from the site?
Yes. For example, if you are prejudiced, if you won't open your house up to interracial couples or gay people or whatever, if you show any sign of being a racist or not fair, you are pulled from the site immediately. They don't mess around. You can't do stuff like that. And people have. I don't know if they've done it in Salem, but they have done that. So yes, I think that we should go in with the attitude that everyone is going to do a good job of it, especially if they live there. You're very unlikely to have problems. And only if there are problems, then yes, there should be some kind of a recourse. I agree. And Airbnb does do background checks, do get reviews. The host is reviewed. The guest is reviewed. So there is motivation to do well.
Sorry, one last, I promise. So what's the hesitancy about going to the neighbors and communicating, starting that dialogue? I mean, we heard with someone that did it proactively and was able to kind of work through the process, but I know you said overly cumbersome, so that makes it sound like maybe it's a time sensitivity issue, or there's some concern.
With speaking to the neighbor?
Right, and you can anonymously, I mean, I'm kind of putting you on the spot because you live in your neighborhood, although you are moving to Italy, so if you want to...
Well, in 2.5 more, in 138 weeks to be precise, but not that I'm counting. It's the principle of the thing. It's my house.
You want to be able to do it.
It's my room. They're sleeping right next to me. It's my business, and I don't think it's any of my neighbor's business. It's the principle of the thing. And I don't know, you don't probably recall because you weren't, well, to me, you weren't here 8 years ago when I was standing here fighting for a chicken ordinance, but I'm the infamous chicken lady, and Mr. Nanke and Mr. Bennett remember me. But that ordinance, we fought long and hard for it, and when we got it, it was overregulated. And later, after a year, they relaxed it, and they realized we didn't need annual inspections. We didn't need to pay this fee every year, and it wasn't really worth it for the city to have to do that. So let's just not make that same mistake again, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Nope.
Councilor McCoy.
A couple more here. Insurance, do you buy your own insurance or do you get it through Airbnb? How's that work?
It's just my homeowner's insurance, and I checked and saw that it does specifically have liability, and I called them and said, does that cover guests such as Airbnb use? And they said yes. I'm not clear on how much I have to have. Hopefully I already have enough. That wasn't clear to me in the proposed ordinance.
Okay. And then, right now, Airbnb does all your collections, correct? And remits the money to you, less whatever their fee is?
When a person makes a reservation, they make it with Airbnb, they collect the money, it's paid for then. But Airbnb holds on to that money. And then it could be months or weeks or days later, the people come and stay with me. The day after they check in, every Airbnb will give me my money, and they'll keep a small percentage for themselves, and that's it. So there's no actual money exchange between us and the people.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Lewis.
Thanks, Barbara, for coming down. This goes back to the Planning Commission days, and I do remember the chicken talk. I have just one question about the tax that hotels collect for their rooms. Are you collecting that tax is fine with you? You just do not do it yourself,
right?
But have
let Airbnb do
your provider do it. What if there were folks that did their own advertising and had to collect their own fees? You would expect them to collect that tax also? If they rented, for example, if you rented on your own and people could contact you to rent the room.
Without going through a...
Right, without going through a site, would you be willing, and should you be collecting that tax?
Well, in that case, yes, because there would be no other option.
Great. Thank you very much. And finally, Rose Barker.
Good evening. I'm Rose Barker, Ward 1. This is Foxy Barker. She's my service dog. All right. Thank you so much. I hope to round this out with a little bit of a different perspective. I know We've all been hearing a lot of information and probably all thought about this a little bit, so thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors, for your time. As a profession, I work in identity theft prevention. I travel around the nation and I teach people and companies how to protect themselves. So privacy to me is paramount. I want to let you know that I am a chronic user of Airbnb. I will be in Medford tomorrow and Roseburg the next night, and I constantly use Airbnb. So the information that I wanted to share with you is from the perspective of a chronic guest of Airbnb. You are looking at the perfect picture of who an average typical guest might be. I am a transient renter, to use your terminology. I've also done Airbnb abroad, so I've got a lot of variety of experiences, and my views are going to sound extreme to you because I have a very broad girth of encounters that I've had, and I'm hearing a lot tonight, a very small scope of the idea of a short-term rental. Airbnb and the community that I'm involved in is built on a platform of trust and safety. Everybody is rated. Every time I visit a house, I am rated by how I act and how my service dog acts, and it is paramount that I act properly so that I can be hosted by the next house. So there is instituted a check and balance with that, so that I'm going to be a good guest. And I like what Barbara mentioned about how the house is going to be kept up because they want guests to come. I won't come to a house that doesn't look good and that has poor reviews. Won't happen. Also, hosts can require government identification for anybody coming in. So if I were a host, I could require that and know who's coming into my house. Two of my closest friends are hosts on Airbnb. They both wrote me paragraphs on what this has meant to them, and they both said they've had zero issues amongst themselves. So this, to me, raises the bar. The status quo in our region is what I'd like you to look at, what's happening in Portland, Eugene, Seattle. And I want you to consider a couple of things. Basically making this as easy as possible for our locals to get licensed. I want to get licensed. I want to comply. The only reason I'm not a host is because there are so many rules and laws, and I know that it's illegal to do, but I don't even know where to start. So I'd like us to consider like having a fee of $150 once every 5 years, for example. The only thing I want to do to host is host for the eclipse. Love what you guys are doing. All I want is going at $500 a night. Airbnb is sold out. I can make $500 just by registering. I want to do this 3 nights this year, and that's all. So I urge you to consider the people like me who might just want to have a couple of people in every once and again. Not a big fan of the inspections or the licensing
Rose,
requirements.
Time's up.
Thank you.
That's okay. Any questions? Yeah.
It hasn't come up yet, but as a habitual user, you can tell me. What is the competition element for places like this? Even in Salem, we've heard there's 88 of them. I would think that another reason to keep it up and keep it well is there's competition.
Absolutely.
And there's a microscope over these renters. I mean, all they have to do is one bad thing and they're blasted across the internet. So
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I'm always going to look for a free Wi-Fi, of course, because I'm a business person and I need to have access to that. For me, honestly, the biggest thing I look for is when I'm exhausted and I just need to get in and wake up at 6 in the morning, like I will be doing this week, and get to my next presentation. When I'm doing that, I want to have the whole unit. So I want to have an entire apartment or like loft space with a separate entrance. So for me, I will rarely do an in-bedroom. Maybe if I'm just with a friend and we're touristing, but not if I'm business. So that to me is my primary criteria, is to have my own unit.
Okay. Any further questions? Great. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue? Okay. We have questions then for staff? Bryce? Councilor Hoy?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question on page 6 where we talk about the maximum number of guest rooms and guests. It seems like this may have been written backwards, or maybe I'm not understanding it, but it says a maximum of 2 guest rooms may be rented when the resident family is present as host. And when the resident family is temporarily away, the entire dwelling unit may be rented with no limit on the number of guest rooms. Can you talk to me about what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so if you're a family and you were away as the host and somebody was renting your home, it's to allow the entire family to use the entire dwelling unit, not just to be restricted to a couple rooms out of the entire dwelling unit. When you look later in the ordinance, it says you're only still limited to one booking. Only one family could come in and they could utilize that entire house.
Is there any other limit? So is it just limited to how big your house is, on how many people would be there?
There's still the maximum of 2 guests per guest room.
So if you had a 5-bedroom house, 10 people?
Mm-hmm. Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be one booking, one group.
Right. Thank you.
And for definition of bedrooms, are you using the real estate definition, room with a closet?
No, currently,
code
as
definition?
Scan indicated, we reference guest rooms, and it's a room that was intended for sleeping purposes. And then in terms of the housing inspection, the rooms that are being used for housing, for staying overnight would have to meet the housing code for, staying in those rooms.
Councilor Kaiser.
Thank you. Well, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'm not going to say them all. You have to let some other people. So, scenario, I guess, here is something's going on at a short-term rental. It's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Who do I call? Is it the non-emergency line? Will the people who are responding get in touch with the local contact at that time? How do you envision that working?
Well, we recognize that not having, by us having the contact information in the planning department or in the community development department, it's not the greatest for weekends, for or late nights for people to call. I guess there would be the ability to call, the police if there's a real big problem. And I think there's ways to, and I think we've heard different ideas tonight on how to make it easier for the people in the neighborhood to know who the contact is and who they can get a hold of. And one thing, if you go to the City of Bend's website, they have a site where you could just put in a street, and then you could bring up the contact information for any short-term rental or accessory short-term rental, on that block. So, there's a way to solve it with technology, and we don't necessarily need to have a provision in the code, but there's a way to easily make that information available on the web.
So you're looking at an amendment to that effect?
Well, I don't know if you would need to have an amendment to the code to require that. It would just be, a policy that we, create a web page for short-term
At midnight on a
rentals.
Friday night, I'll need that amendment. Go ahead, Councilor Kaiser. Go ahead. Ask some more of your questions.
I've got a list here. As far as the penalty for operating without a license or the enforcement of that, what does that look like? So if somebody doesn't have a license, they don't pay the renewal fee, or what does the city do?
Well, we do have Brady Rogers here with Compliance Services. You could help us out with that.
Brady, as you talk about this question, would you talk just a little about enforcement broadly?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
I think we need to understand it better.
Surely. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. My name's Brady Rogers. I'm the Administrator of the Neighborhood Enhancement Division. To specifically answer the question, as it's a land use issue, it would fall under a 20J procedure. The maximum fine would be $2,000 per day. Probably wouldn't hit that high. In terms of enforcement, where do I start? Salem has a housing and inspection and licensing program right now, and that's undoubtedly where this would fall to that program. Currently, this program is under a severe strain. We are approaching 20,000 dwelling units that we're licensing and inspecting, and I have one inspector to do this work. We have money budgeted in this fiscal year for a study of this program that'll come back with a couple of options, I assume. Either we retool the program in some way to make it possible for one person to do the work, or we go about the business of raising the fees to hire a second inspector, which would take care of the problem as well. The enforcement is an issue. In 2007, we had 11 enforcement officers that went out into the field every day. Today, I put 8 out in the field. And in that time, the city of Salem has grown by about 7%. The multi-unit licensing inspection program has gone up in that same period of time by about 35%. We're looking at about another 35% of rentals coming on in the near future with the current apartment buildings that are planned and being constructed. Once they're built, there's a 5-year period before we actually have to actively inspect them. So there's some that exist now that just their number hasn't come up yet. So there's a lot of work, and I don't have the staff to do it right now. Many of these people here to my right I know because having no one to assign the work for these cases to, I did the weekend and evening work myself on all of these cases. So that's that.
Thank you. Thanks, Brady. I have just 2 more questions for staff. I saw in your presentation, Bryce, it said inspections were going to be once a year for short-term rentals and then every 5 years for accessory short-term rentals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I had also a question about if a property is being rented for long-term, so a normal rental type of agreement, can the property owner use that property for an accessory short-term rental as well?
So you, as an accessory short-term rental, an owner can, choose to rent, to the short-term renters if they have the approval of the owner of the property. But in terms of having, long-term and short-term mixed, yeah, I guess if you have a long-term renter, they could have, be a host and have, folks stay up to 4 guests in their 2 guest rooms if the property owner allowed.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, could I say go rent a house? Could the person I'm renting that from then start saying, well, you're not using an extra bedroom, I'm going to rent it out for a short term? Would that be permitted, or would that have to be spelled out in a lease agreement, or, does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're another renter's being fousted on the, short-term renter's being, put onto the short-term rental. The intent is, so if you were not there as the operator, and so you would have to go through, it would be a short-term rental because, I'm assuming that the current renter, they're not the ones that are operating, and it's the property owner who's absent, so you'd have to go through a conditional use permit, go through the public hearing process, explain the nature of how this is being operated, and if it's a concern, conditions could be placed to say no, we don't feel that that's appropriate, and that's the kind of the beauty of the conditional use process. Yes, it is more expensive, but it allows these potentially more impactful types of rentals to go through the process. Part of the conditional use process is to make, is we recommend contact with the neighborhood association, as the bed and breakfast owner in the Court Chemeketa district did. So that's a way to kind of, have that dialogue with the short-term rentals. The accessory, on the other hand, they're less impactful and therefore don't have that process. But to answer your question, I guess probably not. You couldn't have, those 2 mixed like that.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you very much. I want to get back to the cost to enforce, and so Brady, if you could come back up, and I think maybe this might be Deputy City Manager Duncan may have some answers here too. My first question, I guess, would be toward Casey here. If TOT funds come in, can we use TOT funds to enforce the law, or is that too attenuated to, TOT is to increase tourism and to cultural and et cetera? So I'm wondering if we're increasing, 9% more money's coming in, can we use that for enforcement, or are we limited to general fund sort of funds?
So my understanding of the permitted uses under the charter that the enforcement would not be allowed.
Okay. Now, the charter meaning the TOT, we can't use TOT funds?
Correct.
Okay. Then we've got this 90-day rule, and I have a question for Bryce about the 90-day rule later, but how are we going to enforce that, Brady?
I have no idea.
Yeah, but that was what I thought your answer would be, because what are we going to do if
3 days.
Yeah, and then my question for you, Bryce, on that, let's say we know that the particular person is going to be gone, and we know on the 91st day, does that then stop the ability to rent the house?
Yeah, you get, if you've expended your 95, it's actually 95. It's
Okay,
270,
yeah, sure.
If once 95 is your maximum limit, but
You cannot rent it out.
Right.
And then,
as a non-hosted
Yeah, so I'm
rental.
saying that leads us right into the Brady of how are we going to enforce that?
As a non-hosted rental, you could still continue to be there as a host and have people come and stay when you're there.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're gone 100 days, theoretically, you can't rent a night, you can't rent 5 days.
Yeah, you've exceeded.
Okay. Then how did we get to the 90 days? I mean, how did you come to that figure?
Yeah, we looked at other jurisdictions.
Okay.
Portland has it, and a key component of this is the guest registry. So it has to be maintained by the operator at all times. If there's a complaint, compliance officers would be able to look at it, and if they're going to lie, I guess they'll lie.
Yeah.
And then every year they have to submit that, and that documents how many nights they rented out, how many rooms, hosted or non-hosted, and so that's a measure to have accountability.
And then, thank you, Brady. I have a question about the $150 fee. Now, that could be used theoretically. That goes into the general fund, and that's, let's say there's 88 units, what's 88 times 150? That's, let's say 100, that's easier math, that's $15,000. Is that going to help you any?
In theory, yes. If the results of our study are that we should raise fees to pay for a second multi-unit inspector, then yes. And the fees we charge are based on the time spent out in the field doing the work. It costs about, fully loaded, about $100 an hour to send somebody out to the field to do this work.
Got it.
Assuming little drive time, $100, $150 will break us even.
Then one more, two more actually. One about the notice requirements to the neighbors. There's been some discussion about notice to neighbors. The figure that I would say is 100 feet of the neighborhood, or 100 feet of the area. Is that possible, or is that too onerous, or how would you talk about that? And then also, kind of conjunction with that is like the OLCC thing. I mean, we get notices all the time. There's an OLC application, and 95% of the time I read it and hit delete on my button, and I'm sure that's what neighborhood groups do too. So
there's a couple different types of notices.
I do have one more for
so
you.
there's notices that are provided to allow folks in the neighborhood to understand that there is going to be one of these operating in their neighborhood and who to contact. And so, with that notice, there's also, it comes at, the question of, well, wonder what happens if the contact changes? Do they have to send out a new notice to the neighborhood association? What about new people coming into the neighborhood? How do they know? So having to do like a physical notice every time, circumstances could be changing in the neighborhood, different times. So it may not be the best way, like
well, if it's a residential unit, I would if the owner and the renter has to live there at least for a certain amount of time, I would presume that would always be the person that would be the person that the neighbors would call.
But if somebody new in the neighborhood comes in and doesn't know that there's the rental in the neighborhood,
which is why the mayor was talking about that, and you were talking about the
web.
Let's publicize that it's online. You can go on. It's a great idea. Look at the, Then I guess, Brady, my question is back to you. I was here. We were hearing about, it's a fee every year, and what do we get for that if we only get inspected once every 5 years? And is that fair or not? I'm not necessarily espousing this, but could it be some sort of trade-off, like we say, you're inspected every 3 years, and every time you're inspected, you pay the $150 fee. So not a one-time fee, but a fee based on the, whatever amount of years we say you're going to be inspected.
Yeah, actually, Counselor, how the rest of the housing code, all the other dwelling units that we inspect, hotels, motels, room and boards, homeless shelters, there's nothing in the code that gives us a time frame. We go as often as we need to. We find that in apartments, once every 5 years is generally a good period of time to come around. Some apartments in Salem, we see every 2 years or 3 years because
their history.
There's just a lot of hard living there.
Yeah.
Likewise, apartments, hotels and motels, we see annually.
Sure, because there's a high turnover there.
A high turnover, but also, as Scott said from the Phoenix, sometimes we'll go and half the rooms are occupied. We have to go more frequently to end up seeing the whole hotel over time. So none of those, all those fees are set for about 1 year inspections for hotels, motels, and about 5-year inspections for apartment buildings. Now, if we have to go more often than 5 years, there's fees and penalties that to compensate us for the extra time that our inspectors is spending.
And the reason you go more often than your normal schedule is because complaints have been made known to you, or it's come to your attention that you need to go there more often?
That would be correct.
Councilor, if I may add to that. Oh,
Oops, I'm sorry.
sorry. Can I add to that just to clarify? So the original proposal did have an inspection every year, and Planning Commission changed that to 5 years in their proposal. That's why we had said the fee would be every year, because we were assuming an inspection every year. And the fee, as Brady said, would cover about $100 for inspection. The rest would go to planning and building and safety to process the application. The fee was, as we've considered it, is not intended to fund an additional compliance officer based on whole new, I mean, most uses in the city don't pay for a compliance officer in case that they don't operate
and that's
within the
then
law.
what I just posited. If you did it every 3 years in one inspection, that's consistent with your original idea. We're going to
Yes.
do it every year. If we're going to charge, because we're doing it every year, it's $150.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Councilor Hoy.
Thank you. I'd like to switch gears for a minute to parking. I received a lot of feedback on this ordinance from people in my ward. Overwhelmingly positive, people supportive of this, but the one concern that came up over and over again was about parking. And so I'm curious, if you look at, when you look at other ordinances in other cities, I noticed, especially in some of the historic areas, you're not requiring off-street parking. So is that the same way it is in Portland and other cities, ordinances you reviewed, or what was your experience?
It really varies by jurisdiction. You know, these are kind of an experiment now across, you know, the state and across the nation, and so, you know, the standards, you know, vary, you know, widely. You know, some require, you know, 1 space per guest room, like we do for bed and breakfast today, and then others where parking is not, where they feel parking is not as an important concern, they don't. So it does really vary.
Thank you.
Councilor Cook.
So, Brady, I'm sorry. So, being as code compliance tends to be complaint-driven and not proactive in these areas, if you were to have the registry for Airbnb, turnkey, flip key, all of those, what would you be able to save on staff time? I know the registration fee or licensing wouldn't cover the cost, but by having someone register and then knowing, oh, here's where the points are, how could you adjust workflow, or what kind of staff time could be saved in being proactive in these measures?
I'm not entirely sure I follow that question. You're saying if we had a list of provided to us of all the locations where Airbnbs are in Salem,
Correct.
Would that help us?
As opposed to having to sniff out, you know, there's been parking issues for 4 weeks on my street, and now I've finally had it, so I'm calling you, and now
Yeah.
it's week 5 and the people are gone, and what's happening?
Actually, I've been on the Airbnb website, I've been on a bunch of them, and there are about 100 or so rentals at any given time on any of those lists here in Salem. I believe some of them, or a good fraction of them, are actually outside of Salem city limits. It would be possible, just with the resources we had, to track them down, but we operate on a complaint basis. So I think we've had 5 cases where we've done enforcement here, responded to them all and satisfied them all, just on a complaint basis alone, and have not put resources into tracking down other Airbnbs throughout the city.
And I know we put additional monies on the wish list for an additional code compliance officer, but what is your estimate? How high would the fee need to be in order to fund a position for your department?
For a code compliance officer? Well, as I said, I think it would be more of a holistic approach for all the fees, including the apartments and hotels, to raise them all a little bit. It costs about $100,000 for a compliance officer, a little less, $97,000, $98,000. So you got 88 that we know of. I mean, are we going to charge them $1,000 a year, really? We could, and that would fund the, I don't know how many of them would continue to be in business, but.
And then the last question is, so the eclipse is the big talk for this. Time frame wise, do you anticipate having something like this on the books for code would make it easier to enforce during the eclipse, or because it's so close?
Because it's so close, there's a very low percentage chance we would get any of these inspections done before the eclipse. Our current calendar for those inspections goes out 60 to 90 days. So maybe just one or two we could squeeze in.
To follow up on that's why we're proposing self-inspection, self-certification of your inspection, so that people can submit for the license and get a license before the eclipse. And then we would get to the inspection, hopefully as we can within the first year.
Thank you.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Collections of fees, we talked about this, but, you know, Airbnb would collect it, but we're basically saying we want the tax paid by the operator, you know, whoever's the renter or the landlord, which, why? I guess is my question.
So, yeah, right now the operator is responsible for doing that, and if you're under, and part of the reason is you could host on multiple platforms, and so in order to have, you know, Airbnb collect on behalf of the renters, you know, and to remit that tax to the city, we'd have to have an agreement with them to do that. They've done that with other jurisdictions in the, you know, in the state. But part of the, you know, the concern I think comes from not, you know, we don't know who is, you know, we don't know where the money's coming from. We just get like a sum of money, and there's no way to know, you know, which individual operator is coming from. So right now, if you're an operator, you have the responsibility to report, you know, the monthly, you know, the numbers of rooms you've rented out as an operator, and and then when you throw in like multiple people renting on Airbnb, on, you know, during a week, and, you know, then you have all these different pots of money coming, you know, covering different nights for one operator, it really becomes an auditing, you know, challenge, and to understand that we are actually getting the amount of, you know, funds that are supposed to be collected. So at this point, you know, we haven't entered into that agreement. Obviously, with those, the council would have to do that, and we're just still going with the current way to collect the taxes, as you know, the city has, which is having the operator report. Or if you're like an Orbitz or an Expedia, you can also report on behalf of the operator as well under the merchant model, I believe.
Okay. So you indicated that you'd checked with other municipalities and what they did and how they did it. Were they doing it this way, or did they take whatever these?
No, other jurisdictions, you know, Portland, Eugene, I think Bend. Also, there are other jurisdictions in Oregon that are, you know, allowing Airbnb to collect the tot tax on their behalf. But, you know, if you're an operator and you're using multiple, we have to have then multiple agreements with any, you know, all the operators that are out there, and so we'd have to, you know, separate, you know, agreements with all of them, I would assume.
Do the other cities have that with everybody, or is it just with Airbnb?
I don't know right off the top of my head.
Okay. The other thing I noticed in Airbnb's written testimony is that they wanted to add a clause stating that an operator may satisfy the insurance requirement via a booking service. Is that something we've done, or we?
The ordinance requires proof of insurance, and if you can provide that proof of insurance through, you know, a booking service, then you're covered.
So that's not, in your case, you're saying that to them it's not needed, it's fine, they can buy it through you, but.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Final thing, one final one. On the local contact, I'm still uncertain, and now I'm getting back to, well, okay, it's the 90 days and they're renting it for extended periods of time and nobody's there. The owner's not there, they've gone somewhere, probably south for the winter. So the local contact, how would that work? So they, I mean, how do you envision the local contact thing working?
Well, if we have a better system to, let people know who that contact is, like on the web or something like that, then they, if there was a complaint, they would call that contact and be, if it's after hours, they could come and address it, or if it was something that needed immediate assistance, obviously, or an emergency, there'd be the police. So, that person would have to be, it's either a property management company or the operator who lives nearby who can timely respond and come address the issue.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. One comment, follow up on Councilor McCoy's. I appreciated your response to all the various proposals by Airbnb, and I thought they were thoughtful, and I thought you really answered their questions, and I agree with why you say we don't need to do 1 through 10 or 11. Then, this may be a question for the city attorney, Dan, I'm sorry. I was kind of intrigued by the folks from the Unitarian Universalist Church, and then the last comment was kind of, we don't care, we would be happy to pay a tax. Do we have some problems there legally if we're collecting a tax from a church?
We'll have to review the president's latest executive order, however.
Yeah. Well, if they said something political, I guess we wouldn't have a problem, but yeah, I mean, is that an issue at all?
Well, I think, frankly, the way they phrased it wasn't bad, so
yeah.
Good job. But it's, for a nonprofit, as opposed to a for-profit entity, it strays away from that issue.
Okay, well, and now I'm not espousing this because both you and I are lawyers, but I look at this and say, why doesn't the church say, you're going to come and see this. Members of our house, members of our congregation will put you up in a house, and all that's going to cost is the donation to the the UU Church.
And it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Couldn't advertise on Airbnb.
I'm talking as the son and brother of ministers too, folks.
Advertise on Airbnb.
Why don't we figure out what we're going to do next? I'm going to, I'm going to move that we continue this public hearing until May 22nd. Second by McCoy.
I'd like to make a motion.
You want to do what again?
Right, okay, sorry.
Nope. Do you want to make your motions?
What am I supposed to? Okay, good, thank you. Wait, no, we're supposed to do it now.
She's going to amend it.
Okay.
She can make her
I knew
separate
what I was
motions. We
doing.
can act on those and give yours.
All right.
Yeah, why don't I just withdraw mine, second to withdraw, and you give yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councilors. I would like to move to direct staff to prepare a fee resolution to set the licensing fees for short-term accessory rentals and additional inspected rental units in an amount adequate to allow the city to hire additional code enforcement officers to ensure the proper compliance of the licensing and zoning standards for short-term and accessory rentals, to revisit code fines, and to develop policies to adequately communicate with the neighborhood associations. It's not perfect. One at a time. We can do it
You
again.
can take them all together if you want. You want to second it?
Second.
Yay.
Councilor Anderson.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, do you want to speak to your motion?
You can.
So, we had a lot of testimony tonight, and especially the testimony in my ward. There have been people that have had very experiences that cannot happen again, and that even though they may not be the normal, and even though they may already be against the rules, if we don't have the teeth to enforce this, it doesn't matter what we do. So I'm asking staff to revisit this so that we can actually have tools, as our neighborhood chair spoke to be able to enforce good behavior and be able to, in this case, the stick is just as important as the carrot. People want to come to the community, but we want to make sure that bad behavior is not rewarded, and that we give staff the adequate tools to be able to enforce that as well.
Councilor Hoy.
I just have concerns that, about whether we're going to just price ourselves out of the market here. And if we, the way I heard the motion, we're going to have to raise the fee so high that it would be untenable for anybody to actually provide this service. So that's, if I heard it correctly.
Well, if I may speak to that, that's part of it too, that it's not just a fee resolution for the licensing fees, but also the fines. So this would be part of it.
Okay, Councilor Anderson.
Thanks. I got too busy counting the different items that are in the motion, and I recognize the first one, which is to what Councilor Hoy spoke to, and I will vote against that for that part of the motion for the reasons he stated, and it's just, there's a lot of reasons, but I'll vote against it, but I'm unsure as to what was the second part and the third part.
To communicate, not necessarily neighborhood association, but the website would be a perfectly adequate form of communication with neighbors. And then also the fine schedule. So right now, it's $1,000 a day, is that right?
$2,000.
$2,000 maximum?
Yeah.
And if that was a higher fee, no, it sounds like this is not gaining any traction. I can withdraw my motion.
Well,
why don't we do this? Why don't we, just a thought on how to proceed with your ideas, because I hear you've got multiple ideas there, that perhaps you come prepared on May 22nd.
With an additional motion?
Yeah, and I'd maybe talk to some counselors or
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
think them through and separate them out into pieces, I think. Because you've got at the heart of it. I hear where you're going with it. So I'm going to place my motion again to continue the hearing to May 22nd. Okay, second from me. So what I'm asking is that the entire record stay open. We'll have another public hearing on May 22nd, make sure more people are aware that we're talking about this issue, gives more. I'd like to have heard from a couple more neighborhood groups if there's any out there. And also give us all a chance to digest what we've heard. We've heard an awful lot of information, and I think this gives us a chance to do that. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you. I agree, and I keep comparing this to the TNC legislation that we passed. We had a whole lot of hearings and discussion on that, and this is really the first one we've had any time for any in-depth discussion. So I'm in favor of that. I will tell you, had we gone today, and I don't exactly know what to do with this, but I would have amended the staff recommendation to say, let's go to 300 days. The owner has to be in the unit as opposed to 270 days. That's still 65 days. That's an awful long time. And just 90 days to me seems too much. That's a quarter of the year that the person can't be there. So I don't know if I need to make a motion for that or the council could say. Yeah, I'll make it at the next meeting, but that's something I'm concerned about. I also am intrigued by having a 3-year inspection instead of a 5-year inspection, and then charging $150 every 3 years. And then finally, the other thing I'm interested in is some sort of notice to the neighbors within 100 feet, at the time of the application, or the staff, I'd like to hear something about that when the staff comes back.
Okay, great. Councilor Nanki, did you have something?
Thank you. This is reminiscent of TNCs. It's also very reminiscent of chickens.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we continue to have times, Ms. Palermo will be down here for every one of those.
Come prepared on the 26th.
No, but that being said, I think there's a lot of issues people would like to talk about, and this forum isn't really good for it. Can we do a work session? Or
Sounds like a good idea.
We can do anything we want.
Which actually gives us a little more flexibility to bounce stuff off staff.
You can do a work session. The only thing I would mention is that the CLIPS event's coming up August 21st, and if you want to get this in place by that time, there's a little bit of urgency.
Well, and
So
if
would
our
you like
prices
a
are
work
too high,
session?
nobody's going to do it for 3 days out of the year, so we won't pick up that extra capacity in the city. Or if it's like, geez, I'm going to potentially
I
get,
was going to say
Would you like a work
anyway.
session
fine.
on the 22nd?
I'd like a means to be able to talk about some of the issues a little better than having to talk to a formal motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Well, we could begin the May 22nd meeting with a 5:30 work session.
That would give us a half an hour, which...
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Everybody comes prepared.
Is that an amendment, Councilor Nanki?
And then Bryce, you could have some responsible things, yeah.
Well, your rules, council rules, I believe it's 3 councilors or the mayor can request a work session or staff.
I'll request one.
Okay.
There you go, so we don't have to do anything. Yeah.
3 of us equal 1 of you.
You're equal to 3 of us.
That's why you get paid 3 times as much.
That's right. I got those 3 extra cookies.
And if the mayor can't, certainly the sense of council is a work session, so we'll have one scheduled.
Okay. Okay, motion is to continue the hearing to May 22nd.
Mr. Mayor.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I would just hope that, to me, I'm generally in favor of this concept, but what's really critical for me is that we have sufficient guardrails up to keep this thing in balance, to protect our neighborhoods, and to really make sure that that this is not negatively impacting the city. So I'm hoping that staff will come back with some options on guardrails, specifically around that maximum number. I would hate to have an unlimited possibility out there, a number of guests. Just some options for that, some optional language for that, I think would be really helpful. That would make me be much more comfortable with this concept.
And I wouldn't be shy, any of you, talking to staff and letting them know of things that you're thinking and would like to have some sort of language or some help with. And come prepared for a half an hour of pretty intense discussion of this, if that's okay. Councilor Lewis?
Yeah, I'd make one comment. We heard from 2 people this evening that are in the business of renting out their rooms. And at least for me, they made it clear that they put a lot of energy and attention into what they do. It'd be nice if staff could reach out, now that there's a rumor that there's 88 of these, not just 2. It'd be nice to hear from some of those folks what they do to protect their property, protect their reputation, to run a viable business. Be nice to know from the business runners.
I don't think they let you know where they are unless you put in your credit card information.
I'd add to...
Actually, you can go on vacation rental by owner, and I think there's a list of at least 75 homes that are on the site that...
Well, adding to Councilor Lewis's, I'd like to know how many actually rent or are renting it for a month at a time when they're not online. I mean, it sounds, I'm getting a sense that most of these folks are renting them 1 room or 2 rooms, and they're there. And that's not, I don't think, where the problem child is, as I asked Mr. Weber. It's when the house is there and everybody's gone and they're having a good old time on a weekend or something.
Councilor Nanki?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, in June, I have a family reunion, and we do it every couple of years somewhere inside of the States, and we always have to get a larger piece of property to fit a bunch of very loud Nankies in.
They all like you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, baby.
It's like
The singing alone.
So, I'm used to that, and it's like you rent the entire facility, and you have 10, 15, 20 people that are typically not in the middle of someone's neighborhood. They're specially designed for that. More like a coast or adjacent to ski areas, or this one's down next to the redwood forest. So I don't think we would ever, as a family, try to get a house in the middle of a residential. It's like, then we just come over to Brad's house. So
We'll do our best to survey currently unregulated operations and unlicensed operations in the city. Given the 2-week turnaround, I'm not sure how thorough that information will be, but we'll attempt to answer some of the questions that are being raised tonight by council.
Well, just on the comments as far as operators who are out there right now, I mean, we have pushed a new social media. I mean, we could actually just stick out a general, hey.
Because that works.
Yeah, that self-incrimination thing.
No, more so.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay, ready?
Have him come down to the police department. That worked great.
Councilor Nanki, I expect I would see a lot of laughing smileys on that post.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the motion unless there's, okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We will continue this public hearing until May 22nd, and we will have a work session on May 22nd at 5:30. Okay, where are we?
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I know.
3.3. Counselor McCoy, we are at special orders of business, 3.3E.
Like ordering chickens.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second by Lewis.
Listen, there were multiples out there. If I just keep quiet for long enough.
So this was pulled at staff's request. The same item appeared on the URA agenda. We just need to, we'll clarify the parties that have been listed in the staff report, but there's no additional information.
We're not voting on it, then we're pulling it off the agenda.
No.
No, you are voting. We are voting.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, information reports.
There's a lot of them.
There's a bunch. Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask on these or anything going on here? Okay.
I got it.
Yes.
It's not a question, it's a comment, but looking through these, at least compared to the last 8 years, it's nice to see future development coming down the road with the intention of building housing for our citizens. And it really has been 8 years since I've seen this much. And that's the 2.5 years I've been on this body and the 10 years I was on the planning commission.
Good point. Okay, thank you very much. We'll go then to first reading of ordinances.
Ordinance Bill Number 717, an ordinance relating to amending the utility code, amending SRC Chapter 70, 70A, 71, 72, 73, and declaring an emergency.
Councilor McCoy.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Nanki.
Very nice.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And next one. Sorry.
Ordinance Bill Number 917, an ordinance relating to parking, amending SRC 102005, 040, 045, 055, 060, and 135, and 245, and creating new SRC 102.067.
Councilor McCoy.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Kaiser. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next one.
Ordinance Bill Number 1217, an ordinance vacating a portion of Rose Garden Way Northeast and declaring an emergency.
Councilor Ossick.
Move staff recommendation.
Second by Hoy. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll just keep going.
Ordinance Bill Number 1117, an ordinance allowing multiple family residential use in the PH zone, amending SRC 543.005 and 702.005.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Anderson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And our final first reading.
Ordinance Bill Number 1317, an ordinance relating to a change to the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan map designation for 3290 Boone Road Southeast.
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
By
Hoy. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And we'll go to second readings.
Ordinance Bill Number 617, an ordinance relating to nonprofit shelters for victims of domestic violence in the RA, RS, RD, RMI, RMII, RH, CN, CO, CR, CG, CB, and IC zone. Amending SRC 510.005 and 010, 511.005 and 010, 512.010 and 015, 513.005, 514.005, 515.005, 520.015, 521.005, 522.005, 523.005, 524.005, 551.005, and 806.015.
Okay. Roll call then.
Counselor Kaiser?
Aye.
Counselor Anderson?
Aye.
Counselor Nanki?
Aye.
Counselor McCoy?
Aye.
Counselor Osick?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Counselor Cook?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Okay. Next one.
Engrossed Ordinance Bill Number 317, an ordinance relating to vehicles for hire, amending SRC 30.001 and 005, repealing SRC 30.700 through 30.725, 30.740, 745, 800, 805, 810, 820, creating new provisions SRC 30.700, 705, 710, 715, 720, 725, 730, 735, 740, 745, 750, 800, 805, 810, 815, 820, 825, 830, 835, 840, and 845, renumbering SRC 30.730, 735, 750, 815, and 825.
Okay, roll call.
Counselor Anderson?
Aye.
Counselor Nanki?
Aye.
Counselor McCoy?
Aye.
Counselor Osick?
Aye.
Counselor Hoy?
Aye.
Counselor Cook?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Kaiser?
Aye.
Mayor Bennett?
Aye. Ordinance passes. And we're to, congratulations, got through. Good one. What?
Because of the postponement.
Yeah.
Just all takes time. I have Charles Cooksey under public comment.
Hello, I'm Charles Cooksey. I live at 320 Columbia. Pretty much, I've been struggling to stay in contact with my family, buy groceries, and just do my everyday activities without the use of an automobile. I've looked into it a lot. I found a bunch of interesting information, which I provided to all of you, and I just wanted to read a few interesting things from that. Starting on the first page, it says the forgotten legal maxim is the free people have the right to travel on the roads which are provided by their servants for that purpose, using ordinary transportation of the day. Licensing cannot be required of free people because taking on the restrictions of a license requires the surrender of a right. The driver's license can be required of people who use the highway for trade, commerce, or hire. That is if they earn their living on the road and if they use extraordinary machines on the roads. If you're not using highway for profit, you cannot be required to have a driver's license. On page 2 to page 3, it says personal liberty largely consists of the right of locomotion to go where one pleases, only so far restrained as the rights of others it may take necessary for the welfare of all other citizens. The right of the citizen to travel upon the public highways and to transport his property thereon by horse-drawn carriage, wagon, or automobile is not a mere privilege which may be permitted or prohibited at will, but the common right which he has under the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Under the constitutional guarantee, one may therefore, under normal conditions, travel as an inclination along public highways or in public places while conducting himself in an orderly and decent manner, neither interfering nor disturbing another's rights. He will be protected not only in his persons, but in his safe conduct. Page 22. I'm sorry, page 9. At the top, the distinction must be drawn: 1, traveling upon and transporting one's property upon the public road, which is our right, and 2, the using of public roads as a place for business or a main instrumentality of business, which is a privilege. Then on 22, it asks the question, is this statute reasonable, which is specifically talking about driver's license. The answer is no. The real purpose of the license is much more insidious. When one signs the license, he or she gives up his or her constitutional right to travel. Fast forward a little, it says, also the right by trial of jury by 12 persons, the right to counsel, as well as the normal safeguards, such as proof of intent, a corpus delicti, and a grand jury indictment. So pretty much, I feel that our state and our city has been doing a great disservice to the citizens. I believe the regulations are proper for people conducting business, but not for people trying to go about their everyday lives.
Well, Mr. Cooksey, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are adjourned.